Surrounding the submarine, zoom! Several people appeared from inside the sea and thrust their tridents. There were about 20 people. All of them have emerald green hair and ears that looked like fan-shaped fin. By their looks, they were a group of sea dweller tribe. Their eyes were overflowed with caution and dangerously narrowed. Among them, a man faced Hajime with thrust spear and asked him,
"Who are you? Why are you here? And what's the thing you are riding on?"
Hajime was busy chewing the fish that filled his mouth to the point of his cheeks swelling. He didn't plan on opposing them, so he wanted to answer quickly, but unfortunately the fish he was currently eating was chewy and large. It took time before he could swallow it. Hajime took a serious pose, but considering how he calmly ate his meal, even though spears were pointed at him while being surrounded, made others see him as nothing but an impudent fellow. Banes appeared on the forehead of the man who asked him. Anyhow, even if they had their doubts, it was too much for them to be this menacing after finding humans in the sea. Shia thought of breaking the volatile situation by answering in the place of Hajime.
Please calm down. We are...
Silent. A rabbit man tribe like you should not open your mouth.
The Rabbitman tribe's position was low, even among demi-human race outside of the Sea of Trees. How they were strangely agitated and how they stubbornly wanted Hajime, who was looking down on them from their POV, to answer them might also be a factor. Changing the target of his spear, the man grandly thrust the spear at Shia. The attack of a Sea Dweller tribe would not pass through Shia's defense with her strengthened body. The thrust spear would only shallowly cut Shia's cheek, even if she didn't dodge it. The man probably wanted to slightly hurt her to give Hajime a warning. As expected, the party felt it was abnormal. After all, the Sea Dweller tribe wasn't this fierce. However, that was a bad move no matter what their circumstances were. No matter if it was for a warning, Hajime would not let go those who tried to hurt Shia. In a moment, huge killing intent and pressure poured down like a huge cataract, spreading on the sea's surface like a ripple, causing rough waves. With his eyes opened wide, the man who was staring at Hajime's sudden change was blown away from his spot, accompanied by a loud sound. He bounced several times on the surface of the sea, flew while spinning, and finally sank into the sea. With dumbfounded expressions, the remaining Sea Dweller tribe's members moved their gaze from the blown man to Hajime, who somehow was gripping the tail of a large roasted fish with a pose of someone having done a full golf swing. The splashing seawater was sparkling as it reflected the sunlight. Even the eyes of the dead fish were somehow shining.
What?
The Sea Dweller tribe's members were flustered. Shouldering the somewhat eaten fish, Hajime glared at the man beside the blown-away man. Needless to say, having received a pressure he never felt before, the man of Sea Dweller tribe thrust his spear while shouting as he panicked from being glared by Hajime.
Z-A-R.
Even in all the man's life until now, it was an attack that satisfied him the most. Having premonition of death, he instinctively did a sure kill attack. However, the sure kill attack pierced into the mouth of the white-eyed fish and was easily stopped.
Eh? What? How did the stars notice?
When Hajime swung the fish, the man was dumbfounded after seeing the unbelievable spectacle, and thus the spear was easily snatched. The swinging momentum made the spear fly out from the fish's mouth, directly hitting the face of another person of Sea Dweller tribe, leering at the person from Sea Dweller tribe who groaned as the blood gushed out from his bleeding nose. Hajime once again swung fish. The man whose spear was taken and thrown away had cramped cheeks because of the nonsensical scene of the white-eyed fish approaching his face with its opened mouth and somehow shining in bright red. Then, he was blown away just like the man earlier. Munch, munch, gulp. Now then, I actually don't want to fight against the Sea Dweller tribe. As such, why don't we calm down and have a talk here? However, indeed, I can't stay silent if someone tries to hurt my companion. The people blown away wouldn't die because I held back, okay? With the limp fish in one hand, which lost its shine, Hajime proposed, after deactivating his pressure, Hajime himself didn't really want to fight the Sea Dweller tribe's people who were of the same tribe as Mew. Although the other side tried to kill him, he actually didn't even see them as a neighborhood uncle, totally ignoring them. However, the Sea Dweller tribe didn't seem to accept his proposal. It was because their pride seemed to have been damaged by Hajime, who looked down at them expressing, "You are not even my match," even though humans were at a disadvantageous position in the sea, and he had blown away their comrades, even though he said they didn't die. Moreover, because of their abnormally high alert against the human race, they could not trust Hajime's words at all. "We must not let our guards down." They took distance from Hajime's party and took a stance ready to throw the short harpoons on their backs.
I see. It's not enough to kidnapping that child, huh? That's why you come here again to kidnap other children of ours? We won't give you the time to cast any magic. The sea is our territory. Don't think you can return unhurt. We will make you spit that child's location, even if we need to chop your limbs. Don't worry, we will keep you alive until we hand you over to the kingdom. Your safety isn't guaranteed, though.
It seemed to be an abnormal situation. Rather than being cautious, strong grudge could be seen lodged in their eyes. Hajime somehow understood the cause of their agitation from the words, "kidnap other children." These people were likely to have misunderstood him as the one who kidnapped Mayu. Riding on unknown transportation and taking along a slave from Rabbitman tribe while wandering around the territory of Sea Dweller tribe, it wasn't so strange for a human like him to be misunderstood. The demi-human race held a very strong unity and affection towards their race. It was certainly so for their own race, but it was even stronger among their own tribe. Haulia tribe went out of the Sea of Trees just for Shia, while the Bearman tribe ignored the decision of the chief's conference to take revenge on the one who injured their chief. Even the Sea Dweller tribe wasn't any different. Any children of their tribe are important. Even they weren't their own. "Even if she doesn't go her way to treat me as her father, she has these people treat her like their daughter, eh?" The mutter mixed with a wry smile was aimed at Mew, who wasn't here. Following that, Hajime tried to say Mew's name to solve the misunderstanding. About that kidnap.
Get him!
However, faster than his words, the Sea Dweller tribe began to throw the harpoons one after another. Even though the lower half of their bodies was underwater, treading on it, the harpoons were flying with a considerable speed, and indeed they were aimed at the shoulders or feet and not to kill them. In thoroughness, they were also stabbing the submarine, which shook it intensely. If it was a normal human, he would have his balance broken and would either be pierced by the harpoons from being unable of taking evasive maneuver or fall into the sea and suppressed by the Sea Dweller tribe. Well, if it was a normal human,
Wave Castle.
with Yue's mutter, the seawater compressed as it surged, obstructing the harpoons coming from all directions. Following that, while the Sea Dweller tribe were still astonished by the non-chanted magic, Yue made around 20 thunderballs floating around her. At the same time, the sound of upsurged seawater had literally become a rampart, returned to normal. The people of Sea Dweller tribe witnessed the floating and sparkling thunderballs.
Right.
A scream of order rang out. The paled tribe members panicky turned on their heels to run away. However, they were too slow. Each of the thunderballs flew towards a different direction, not letting even one of the Sea Dweller tribe away. Mildly electric shocked them. Such a scream could be heard from them. After a while, the 21 people of Sea Dweller tribe were floating on the surface. Yue, cheers for the good work.
Nin Hajime. About the thing these people were saying.
Well, it must be about Miu.
A lot of things happened even when we were going to listen. As expected of Hajime-san. Not even having the time spent in a town, a problem had already appeared.
Please stop, Shia. I am actually a little worried about that too, damn it. There should have been no problem here if Miu was here. Hajime was sighing while he worried about it. Then, for the time being, he moved to gather the people of Sea Dweller tribe's drowned bodies. After he instantly remodeled the sub by making a carrier where he put the afro-haired, white-eyed people of Sea Dweller tribe, the party continued their voyage. You effectively weakened one of the thunders, which made the person immediately awake. That person guided the party into the harbor after they explained the situation to him. At first, because Hajime knew Miyu's name and characteristics, the man said, "So you are the culprit after all," as he raged. However, Hajime was already irritated, so he expressionlessly slapped him until the man calmed down, and the man heard the party's story after being disciplined. Following that, when the party told him Miyu was currently in Enkadi and will immediately return to Elisen, the man asked the party to allow him to tag along with them to Enkadi. For the man, he could not just swallow Hajime's party's story without any proof, so he wanted to go along with the party to Enkadi to at least find a clue about Miyu. Beside the young man before them who was guiding them, the people who previously were bellowing at Hajime were those who directly knew Miyu. Miyu's mother was also injured when Miyu was kidnapped, thus these people were becoming emotional. And, because he would feel awkward when he reunites with Miyu after having beaten up her acquaintances, Hajime reluctantly accepted the young man's regestus. Following that, after advancing on the sea for a few hours,
Hajime-san, it has come into view. The town is, finally, a place with people.
Oh, it really is in the middle of the sea, eh? Shia was pointing at Elisen with sparkling eyes and said to Hajime, moving his gaze, indeed a big town floating above the sea had come into his view. Hajime moved the submarine towards the place with a lot of protruding piers. After leering at the Sea Dweller tribe, human tourists and merchants who became pop-eyed after seeing Hajime riding on an unknown vessel, the party moored at a vacant spot. The people of the Sea Dweller tribe came before the party, witnessed the tens of unconscious people of Sea Dweller tribe on the submarine's carrier, and raised a commotion. However, Hajime thought it would be okay because he had explained the situation to the young man, so for the time being, he and the young man unloaded the fainted people onto the pier. After they did that, fully armed people of Sea Dweller tribe and human soldiers had already crowded in. The young man took a step forward to explain the situation and began to talk like a big shot. Hajime had wanted to quickly return to Ankadi and meet Kaori's group, so when he watched the young man, he became irritated and said inwardly, "Just decide who will travel with us already." Hajime wanted this to end peacefully, but it indeed couldn't be that smooth. Pushing aside the young man who was confused, the soldiers rushed to the party. Hajime's party were surrounded without a place to escape. On the small pier,
"Be obedient. Let us restrain you until we can clarify the truth."
Oi, didn't you hear the story?
"Of course! And it is better if we are the one who go to confirm it. There's no need for you to go."
Words without any chance of refusal, Hajime became even more irritated, but he controlled himself, because here was Miyu's hometown. "Listen here, our companions are waiting for us there, but even though we want to immediately head to Enkadi, didn't we come all the way here to return those who mistakenly attacked us?"
Regardless if it was a misunderstanding or not, even if the kidnapped child is indeed an Ankadi, you're suspicious because you wandered around Elisen's territory on an unidentified vessel. There's no saying you won't run away on our way to Ankadi, right?
What's with this situation this time? If we want to run away, we can just annihilate these people and escape right after that.
There's also that point. But it didn't change that you entered our jurisdiction without permission. Furthermore, you attacked the vigilante corps that discovered you. There's no way we can release you that easily.
It was them who didn't listen to us and attacked due to their agitation. Even so, you think we would obediently let you restrain us? Just cut it out already. Hajime's eyes narrowed dangerously. The man who seemed to be the leader of the soldiers before him was frowning from the heavy aura overflowing from Hajime. On the leader's chest was the badge with Herlicht Kingdom's crest, surmising that he was the commander of the regiment sent under pretext of the kingdom's protection. Among the Sea Dweller tribe, there were people who might be from the Vigilante Corps, and they didn't back away even though they were taken aback by Hajime's aura. For Hajime, this place was Miyu's hometown, and he didn't want any problem in Elisen, since he thought it was likely to become the party's base because they would surely take time to search Meljean Bottom Sea Ruin, whose location was unknown. It was the truth that Mew was in Ankadi, and he understood the suspicion could be solved. However, Hajime's hostility to the injustice in this world could be called a conditioned reflex. As such, he wouldn't easily accept this. It was a truly explosive situation. Within the raised tension, Hajime thought that he must not rampaging in Miyu's hometown, and by the time he wanted to concede,
Just now?
with her rabbit ears moving about, Shia began to look around the sky. Hajime didn't look away from the commander and asked, "What is it?" However, before Shia could answer him, Hajime also felt a small presence and voice. "Ah, what?"
Papa!
Hajime hurriedly looked up, and somehow a small shadow was falling from the empty sky. With arms spread, the shadow that was free-falling, full of smile, was Miyu! Win! That's right, it was Miyu. Miyu was skydiving. Without parachute, looking carefully, behind her was the black dragon form of Tio, who was hurriedly descending, and riding on her back was Kaori, who was also in a panic. As soon as he recognized the falling shadow was Miyu, Hajime activated aerodynamic and ground shrinker. He immediately jumped from his spot, ignoring the pier that was blown by the impact, and the soldiers screaming as they fell into the sea. Hajime that had instantly jumped from more than 100 meters in height, thanks to aerodynamic, to jump towards the place Miyu was going to fall through, and activated light speed. Inside the slowed-down world, he made sure Miyu was in his arms, and he fell with a regulated, miracle-like speed, perfectly nulled any kind of shock. With Miyu in his embrace, Hajime used aerodynamic to hop and bounced until he reached the ground. Inwardly, the cold sweat was flowing like a waterfall.
Papa!
Without even knowing a shred of what Hajime was thinking, Miyu rubbed her face on Hajime's chest with a smiling face. Perhaps it was Tio who told her Hajime was right under them. Thus, although he didn't know whether it was accidental or perhaps deliberated, she fell towards Hajime. Seeing how she was smiling as she fell, there's no mistake she believed Hajime would surely catch her. Even so, it took an extraordinary courage to do a free fall with a full smiling face. Restrain yourself! Hajime retorted at the 4-year-old child in his mind. Hajime was frowning as he thought of scolding her, but when they got to the ground, he patted Miyu. Hick, sob, hick. A sobbing sound of a young girl resounding nearby the pier that had turned into wreckage. The onlookers and soldiers were crowding there, but there was not even a clamor, and the place was strangely quiet. It was because of the should-be kidnapped girl of Sea Dweller tribe who flew down from the sky, the human boy who jumped into the sky and caught her, and there was the black dragon with a girl riding on its back in the sky. However, the biggest reason was how the boy greatly scolded the girl from Sea Dweller tribe. Well, actually, it was how the young girl called the boy who scolded her.
Sup, Papa? Sorry.
Promise me you won't do anything that dangerous again, okay?
Mew will.
Okay, that's good. Come here.
Papa!
The figures of Hajime, who was on one knee as he scolded the young child, and Miyu, who obediently reflected as she scolded by him, though she cried then and jumped into Hajime's chest when she was forgiven, were as normal as that of a father and his child. It was also shown by how Miyu repeatedly called him Papa. The situation where the should-have-been kidnapped child of Sea Dweller tribe adoring a human boy enough to treat him as her father, and how Hajime treated Miyu as his own daughter made everyone dumbfounded, not understanding what had happened. Their minds were asking the same thing, which was, how did it come to this? Hajime lifted Miyu with his arm and patted her back to calm her, and finally, the surrounding people returned to their senses and began to cause a great commotion. As he leered at the clamoring, perplexed people, Hajime patted Miyu's back, and someone hugged him from behind. When he looked over his shoulder, there was Kaori's figure, whose head was on his shoulder, slightly trembling.
I'm glad. I am really glad. Hick, hick.
This time, Kaori had begun to cry. Even though she acted firm, inside she was worried Hajime might be dead. She believed in Hajime's survival, but there was no way she didn't feel worried about him. That added to how he went missing for the second time shortly after they finally met again, Enduring it was impossible for her. I am sorry to make you worry, but as you can see, I am full of life here. That's why please don't cry. If Kaori cry, I will be immensely troubled.
Then let me stay like this for a little more.
Troubled, Hajime patted Kaori's head, whose hands were wrapped around his arm. However, maybe because she couldn't stop crying, Kaori buried her face more and more into Hajime's shoulder. Both of her hands were now tightly embracing around Hajime's stomach from behind.
All you, explain what are yoga?
Sorry.
The above was the commander-like person who was dripping wet due to being blown away into the seas as the consequence of Hajime's jump. He didn't read the mood and tried to Gestian Hajime. However, he was knocked by Tio, deactivated her dragon form when she landed, who was running in short steps towards Hajime. Thus, the man once again fell into the sea. Not minding the man that much, Tio came beside Hajime, held his head and pressed it into her cleavage. What the? Oh, Tio!
This one believes, thou know? This one believes. Even so, master, too much time hath passed until this...
When Hajime Giatli looked at Tio's face from her cleavage, her expression was one of asserting her important one inside her arms, with tears accumulated on the edges of her eyes. This time Hajime felt it couldn't be helped, and let her do as she pleases, because he had relied on her to do something unreasonable. While that happened, Miyu said, "Miyu will hug Papa too," and she clung to Hajime's nape. Shaya, who was beside Yue, who was beside Hajime, began to hug his free arm. The surrounding gazes couldn't even see Hajime, as his whole body was covered by a beautiful little girl, beautiful girls, and a beautiful woman. The surrounding gazes were gradually changing from one of perplexion to one of looking at them warmly. Even the agitated vigilante corps and soldiers had lowered their arms, dumbfounded.
You people, not only once, but twice. I will arrest you for obstructing the kingdom's soldiers' work.
Once again crawled up onto the pier. The commander-like person was angrily glaring at Hajime's party. With weapon in hand, he seemed to be ready to attack at any moment, though Hajime couldn't be thought of as the kidnapper from how the kidnapped Miu was abnormally too attached to him. There were too many unknown things about him, so of course the man wanted to Gestian him. Ever Hajime since the beginning had wanted to explain that he was entrusted by the head of Furen's guild branch, Ilwa, to escort Miu. However, he was troubled as he had nothing to prove that, but now it was at hand. With treasure box returned by Tio, Hajime took out his status plate and the request form from Ilwa. Then he presented them to the commander.
Let me see, a gold rank, moreover, a direct reguest from the head of Foreign's branch?
Other than the reguest form, there was also the letter from Ilwa where the details were written. It was addressed to the Ellison's mayor and the top brass of the soldiers who resided in this town, the man before the party. After reading the letter intently, the commander spaded a big sigh, and after he hesitated a little, he gave up as he drooped his shoulder, then saluted.
The reguest has been completed. Nagumo dono.
It is good that all doubts have been cleared. You must have things that you want to ask, but we are in a hurry. So I want you to not ask anything because I want to let this child meet her mother right now. It's okay, right?
Of course it is. However, as a soldier of this kingdom, I can't overlook about the dragon, you jumping, and the ship-like thing from before.
Radically changing from the previous oppressive manner, the commander's attitude became one which paid Hajime with respect. Even so, he appealed with his strong gaze to Hajime that it was impossible to overlook those. About that, can we just talk about it in another time? I am going to stay in this Elysian for a while after all. I also think there's no need to report about it to the kingdom because they probably already know about it.
I see. Anyway, it's good as long as we can have a chance to talk. Now please return that child to her mother. Does she know of her mother's condition?
No, she doesn't, but it's okay. After all, we have the best medicine and healer here.
I see. Then, let me guess 10 you once, things are settled.
The commander lastly introduced himself as Saluz. Then he went to control the crowd by dispersing the onlookers. A dutiful person. The people who know Miu Yu seem to want to call out to her, but Hajime used his gaze to stop them, because much time would pass before she returns to her mother if they did that.
Papa! wants to meet Mama!
Of course, so let's hurry and meet her. Pulling Hajime's hand, Miu urged on with, "Hurry, hurry!" It had been around 2 months since the last time she returned to her house and mother, so it couldn't be helped, though she was usually laughing as she was taken care of by Hajime's party on their way. At night, when the time to sleep came, she wanted to be spoiled, because she indeed missed her mother. On their way to Miyu's house, with Miyu as their guide, Kaori came close to him and asked him with a small, uneased voice,
Hajime-kun, about what the soldier from before said.
"Well, it doesn't seem to be life-threatening. It's just that her wound is rather severe, and it's also the physiological one. Well, there's no need to worry about the latter with Miyu being here. So please check her injury."
Leave it to me.
While having that kind of conversation, they heard a commotion from the road ahead. It was the voice of a young woman and several voices of men and women.
Lemia, calm down. It's impossible with the condition of your legs. That's right, Lemia-chan. Miyu-chan will surely come back.
I don't want to. Didn't you say Mio have come back? Then I must go to see her. I need to welcome her.
Apparently, the woman tried to get out of the house, and she was stopped by several men and women. It was likely because an acquaintance had told Miu's mother of her return. With the resounding of the frantic voice of the woman called Lemia, Miu's face bloomed and shone. Then, as loud as she could, she called out to the woman in her mid-20s who had collapsed at the entrance door while running.
Mama!
Miu.
Running with all her might and with an expression full of smile, Miyu jumped into the bosom of the woman, her mother, Lemia, who tried to steady her legs before the front door. Seeing the figures of a mother closely and tightly embracing her daughter, expressing she didn't want to be separated again from her child, made the surrounding people look at them warmly. For so many times Lemia repeatedly said, 1 a.m. sorry, to Miyu. It was either because she had lost sight of Miyu or her incapability to come looking for her, or maybe both. Tears fell as Lemia both feel relieved from her daughter's safety and also the grief from being incapable of protecting here. Looking at Lemia with anxious eyes, Miu gently patted her mother's head.
It's okay, Mama. Mayu is here, so there's nothing to worry.
Me.
Never did she thought she would be comforted by her 4-year-old daughter, so Lemia's teary eyes unconsciously wide opened and she watched Miu. Miu was also looking straight at Lemia, and there's indeed worry about Lemia lodged inside her eyes. Miu was a mama's girl and couldn't stand being alone before she was kidnapped. And although she also had painful times herself, she was more broken-hearted about her mother than herself in this reunion. Surprised by that, Lemia was unconsciously watching Miu in seriousness, which made Miu smiled, and this time she was the one who hugged Lemia tightly. Lemia wasn't that badly injured both in body and mind, but she was suffering from the sleepless night, overly worrying about Miu, but it seemed her daughter had returned all grown up, more than before. This fact made Lemia inadvertently raise a wry smile, with her shoulders relaxed and her tears stopped. Lemia was looking at her daughter with eyes filled with love. Miu and Lemia once again hugged each other, but suddenly Miu raised a scream-like voice.
Mama, your legs! What happened? Are you injured? Does it hurt?
Apparently, Miu noticed the state of Lemia's legs from over Lemia's shoulder. Both of her feet peeking from Lemia's long skirt were bandaged all over. They were in a miserable state. This was the thing Salus talked about, and it was what Hajime's party heard from the young man on their way to Elysian. The thing that made the Sea Dweller tribe agitated was not only was Miu kidnapped, but also how her mother was seriously injured, that it became impossible for her to walk. Though Miu said she was kidnapped when she was separated from Lemia, the Sea Dweller tribe wouldn't be able to say it was a kidnapping unless there's an eyewitness. They were able to declare so because it seemed Lemia had actually encountered the kidnappers. Lemia had discovered suspicious men erasing their footprints in the sand near the coast when she was looking for Miu, when she got separated from her. Though she felt a bad premonition, she approached the men to ask whether they know her daughter. The men's faces were expressing, "Oh shit," and began to chant all of a sudden. Convinced the men had a part on Miyu's disappearance, Lemia tried to somehow get Miyu back, running along the footprints. However, one of the men fought back by firing flame bullets. Fortunately, she avoided being hit on her upper body, but her legs were hit instead. Then she was blown into the sea by the impact. Lemia lost her consciousness from both the pain and impact. When she woke up, she was being helped by the people from Vigilante Corps who went looking for her because she have not returned. Her life was saved, but as the time passed, Lemia still couldn't feel her legs. Thus she became unable to walk nor to swim. Naturally, Lemia tried to search for her daughter, but she couldn't due to her legs. In the end, she could do nothing but to leave it to the Vigilante Corps and the kingdom. Lemia was in a state where she couldn't even stand properly now. Lemia smiled to try not to make her daughter worry more than this, so she tried telling Miyu, "It's okay." However, faster than her, Miyu asked for help from her papa, whom she depended on the most in this world.
Papa! Please help Mama. Mama's legs are injured.
Mimiwa? Just now?
Papa! Hurry!
Ara, you said Papa? Miu, who is this Papa?
Confused, lot of S floated above Lemia's head. The surrounding people were also clamoring. A lot of absurd remarks were flying from here and there, such as,
Lemia has remarried? No way! Finally, Lemia-chan's spring has arrived again. Congratulations. It's lie, right? Someone, please tell me it is a lie. My Lemia-san.
Papa, Miyu said Papa. Isn't it me?
I am sure it is someone with stage name like Kum Papa. Yep, it must be it. Oi, time for an emergency conference. All members of Watching Lemia-san and Miyu-chan warmly gather now. Storm is coming.
Apparently, Lemia and Miyu, this mother and daughter, were popular here. Lemia was still young, in the mid of her 20s. Although she was considerably emaciated now, she had a well-sculpted look similar to Miyu's. It was easy to imagine how attention-grabbing her beauty would be once she was recovered, so it was understandable for her to be popular. With the commotion that kept growing, Hajime's expression cramped expressing, "I don't want to go there now." Though he thought these people would understand once he explained the details about how Miyu came to call Hajime Papa, he was just a substitute, though inwardly they didn't think so, of her papa, and he wasn't aiming to marry Lemia, but the current misunderstanding were growing at an uncontrollable pace. However, Hajime thought it was a godsend. After all, Hajime and his party wouldn't be able to continue their journey unless they left Miyu to her mother. It will be a goodbye once his party conquered Meljin Bottom Sea Ruin. Hajime thought Miyu had come close to Hajime's party because she was in a place away from her hometown and been forcibly separated from mother. So once she returned to her mother, her desire to be by Hajime's party's side would surely weaken as time passed, though she would be saddened at first. The surrounding people were strongly concerned about Lemia and her daughter, so they would surely help them.
Papa! Hurry! Please help Mama.
Miyu's gaze was firmly looking at where Hajime was. Thus, Lemia and the surrounding people noticed Hajime once they traced Miyu's gaze. Hajime gave up and walked to where the mother and daughter were.
Papa, Mama is?
"It's okay, Miyu. I will surely heal her, so please don't make such a tearful look."
Okay.
Hajime rustled Miyu's hair, who was looking at him with tearful expression. Then he moved his gaze to Lemia. Lemia was watching Hajime, dumbfounded. While thinking it couldn't be helped for her to do that, Hajime decided to carry her into the house to heal her because his appearance had made the commotion grow wee more. "I am sorry, but excuse me for a moment, okay?"
Arara?
Hajime lifted Lemia in Princess Carrie while looking like he didn't feel her weight at all. Then he carried Lemia into the house, guided by Miyu. With Hajime carrying Lemia, screams and roars were raised behind them, which he ignored. Lemia herself could only blinking from being suddenly lifted and carried by Hajime. Having entered the house, he found a sofa in the living room, so Hajime slowly lowered Lemia there. Following that, while watching the blinking Lemia who was sitting on the sofa before him, Hajime called out to Kaori. "Kaori, how is she?"
Let me look at her. Limia-san, I will touch your foot. Please say if it hurts.
Yes? What's with this situation?
When she thought her kidnapped daughter had suddenly returned, a man whom her daughter adored and called Papa appeared. Furthermore, unknown beautiful girls and a beautiful woman gathered in her house. Such a situation made Limia eyebrows frowned, troubled. While that happened, Kaori's examination ended, and she told Lamia that her damaged leg's nerves would be able to be recovered with her healing magic.
However, it will take some time. The damaged nerves were in delicate places, so I will need around 3 days for there not to have any side effects to occur. Also, I think it will be better for them to heal little by little. Although it will be inconvenient, please hang on until then because I will surely heal you.
Ara, Mama. I had thought I wouldn't be able to walk anymore. How can I repay you?
Fufu, don't worry about it. You are Miyu-chan's mother, after all.
Come to think of it, what is everyone's relation to Miyu? Furthermore, why didn't Miyu call that person Papa?
While Kaori immediately began to treat Limia's legs, Hajime's party decided to explain Limia the details about things, about how they met Miu and Furen, the riot, and how did Hajime came to be called Papa. Having heard everything while being treated by Kaori, Limia deeply bowed her head in place, then repeatedly thanked them in tears.
Truly, how can repay you for this? It is thanks to you that I was able to reunite with my daughter. I will surely repay this kindness of yours, even with my life, as long as it is something I can do, whatever it is.
Although Hajime's party told her to not mind it, Lemia couldn't consent not to repay the benefactors of her daughter's life. In the meantime, the treatment from Kaori ended for today. When they told Lemia they were looking for an inn, Lemia thought it was a godsend and asked them to just use her house.
Please at least let me do this much. Fortunately, this house is big, so there's room for everyone. Please don't hold back and use this house while you are staying in Ellison. Besides, Mia will be happy with this. Right, Mia? You are happy that Hajime-san and the others stay in our house, right?
Papa is going somewhere?
Hearing Limia's words, Mai Yu, who was resting her head on Limia's lap, woke up, blinking. She was dumbfounded. Apparently, she seemed to think it was a natural thing for Hajime to stay in her house. Her expression said she didn't understand why Limia asked her that question. I thought of putting a little distance once she returned to her own mother.
Ara. Oh, Fufu. It isn't good for Papa to take a distance from her daughter, you know.
No, didn't I explain it before?
I know that you will continue your travels sooner or later. However, that's why please keep being her Papa until that day comes. If you take a distance now, then it would be a sudden goodbye, right?
Well, if you say so.
Oof. It is okay too for you to always be her Papa, you know. After all I have said with my life before.
Saying so, Oof-foo-foo and number 9825, Limia laughed with one hand on her slightly blushing cheek. Such a calming and beautiful smile would normally calm anyone, but a blizzard generated around Hajime. Please, don't joke like that. The atmosphere turned cold now.
Ara, how popular. However, it is almost 5 years since I lost my husband. You also want a Papa, right?
Wait? Is it Papa?
Fufu, she said it. So, Papa?
The blizzard became much more intense. Though he didn't know whether Limia actually noticed the cold atmosphere, her calm aura made her words neither be taken as a joke nor a serious one. That's a good courage, you, was what Yue and the girls' gazes said, which was easily warded off by Limia with a smile, along with ara ufufu. She might be an unexpectedly great person. In the end, the party decided to stay in Limia's house. When time to allocate the rooms, Limia said, "Shouldn't the husband and wife be together?" Which responded with silent reply from Yu and the girls. Then Miu said, Miu will sleep with Papa and Mama, which turned the place into a chaos, but at least it calmed down for now. The party were going to conquer the next great dungeon from tomorrow onwards, so they needed to resupply and mend the broken and lost fixtures, while it was also necessary for them to train on the newly acquired Age of God's magic. However, while thinking he couldn't neglect his few remaining time with Miu, Hajime dozed off on the bed. 3 days after that, how strangely short distance between Lemia and Hajime made the bloodshot glares of envy from men of sea-dweller tribes stabbed Hajime. The neighborhood aunties were also gossiping about Hajime and Lemia. In addition, Yue and the girls' approach became even more intense as they became ill-humored. Yue at night was also becoming more lovely. Even so, Hajime completed the party's preparation and about to begin to search for Meljin Bottom Sea Ruin. When the time came for them to part, Miu wore a truly lonely expression. She greatly pulled Hajime's back hair, but he somehow managed to shake her off on the pier and board the fixed submarine. Waving her hands, Miu firmly shouted, "Papa, have a safe trip!" Following that, with an atmosphere that could neither be taken as a joking nor a serious one, Lemia waved her hand saying, "Have a safe trip, DARLING and number 90825. From the side, they could be seen as wife and daughter, who were sending the husband off to work. Sharp glares were coming from Yu and the girls behind him and the surrounding sea-dweller tribe. It made Hajime slightly hesitant to return here after conquering the next dungeon. Northwest, 300 kilometers away from Sea Town, Alisson. It was the location of one of the 7 great dungeon, Meljin Bottom Sea Ruin J, that the party once heard from Milady Rayson. However, the party didn't have much time to listen to Milady at that time, so she only told them that the moon must be accompanied by Guryuen's proof without the detailed location. And so, Hajime's party only advanced through the vast ocean in accordance to the direction and distance they were told. However, they didn't find anything when they searched the pointed location in the bottom of the sea during daytime. The party had thought they'd be able to find some kind of trace because it was a bottom sea ruin, but it seemed they were too naive. The pointed location was rather shallow compared to the other place in circumference of 100 kilometers, so it must be the correct place. That was what Hajime thought. Reluctantly, the party decided to stop the search and wait until night, when the moon has come out, as Milady had told them. The current time was sunset. The sun was shining in red, with half of itself hidden beyond the horizon, brightening the world for the last time today. The sky and sea were dyed in orange, while a straight road was produced by the reflection of the sun on the sea from over the horizon. A beautiful spectacle of nature, no matter whichever world it was. Hajime was watching the setting sun on the deck of the moored submarine. Abruptly, he thought of something unbelievable, which was whether it was possible to return to Japan if he advances on the road of light leading towards the sun. He smiled wryly as he was thinking about something.
Did something happen?
Noticing the change in Hajime, Kaori called out to him. Because she was taking a shower inboard a while ago, her hair was damp. No, not only Kaori. Yue, Shaya, and Tio had gone up to deck before he was aware of it. Everyone had taken the shower inside the sub that Hajime took pride in. Their flushed cheeks, the damp hair stuck on their cheeks and nape, made their figures truly captivating. The water from the shower room was set to rain right from the ceiling, so it wasn't a problem for the 4 of them to shower all at once. Incidentally, the reason why Hajime was on the deck, looking at the sunset, was because of the possibility of taking into the shower room if he was careless. When the girls were about to take the shower, Tio invited Hajime, which gained approval from Kaori, Shia, and of course, Yue. Then, the 4 cut off the escape routes of Hajime's refusal. Hajime, who will not embrace any other woman except Yue, had clearly said he won't have a naked skinship with other women. However, the girls ignored Hajime as they smiled, leering at Yue, who was blushing while making a flirtatious smile, Kaori and Tio, who were pinning Hajime from the sides, and while Shaya tried to put Hajime unconscious using Doryukin from behind. Feeling the impending danger of his body, Hajime seriously ran away and went to the deck. But isn't it a shame for a man to deny the placed meal before him? Hajime thought that was a foolish gesture and shook his head. Then he replied to Kaori. I am just recalling a little about Japan. After all, the scene here isn't that much different from there.
I see. Yeah, it really is. It is just like the evening sun I have seen in the sea before. Somehow it makes me feel nostalgic. Though not even half a year had passed, eh?
That's because the everyday here is too eventful. Having seated beside Hajime, Kaori was agreeing Hajime's words while looking at the distance. She must be recalling the days she went through in Japan. Maybe because she felt the loneliness from the conversation of the two, Yue trotted her still flushing body towards Hajime and sat on his lap. She entrusted her back to Hajime's chest even though she must be feeling hot. Then she began to watch Hajime right under his face. Her eyes were obviously expressing she wanted them to let her join their conversation. Yue was feeling lonely, and at the same time she wanted to hear about Hajime's hometown. Hajime, while inwardly knocked out by Yue's cuteness, stretched Kaori's cheek, who was sitting beside him, to scold her because a Hanya had appeared. With only that, her mood became better, which made Hajime felt complicated. Hajime thought, why would she do this much for someone who won't accept her feelings? Though he thought of that, he won't say it out loud. After all, it would be rude to her feelings if he did. While he was stretching Kaori's cheek, and at this time Shia drew closer to him from opposite Kaori with sparkling eyes, she was obviously signaling she wanted to be cared too. With his empty other hand, he stroked Shia's rabbit ear. Hey! Shia made a relaxed smile. His back was leaned to by Tio. She didn't demand anything in particular, just quietly sitting back to back against him. However, he understood Tio was relaxed, and she entrusted her weight to him. It was slightly unexpected, since Hajime's only thought was to throw her into the sea if she makes a perverted demand. Then, maybe because she felt something from Hajime's aura, Tio's body shuddered and trembled for a moment, while her breathing turned rough. Hajime's party cuddled close to each other above the vast sea. It would take a while until nighttime came, and the moon will begin to shine. So to kill time, Hajime began to speak a little about his hometown. Hajime's story fascinated Yue and the other two, while Kaori was supplementing him with a radiant smile. Time passed swiftly as they enjoyed the peaceful atmosphere, and the sun had completely gone down to the other side of the horizon, and the moon had began to shine in its place. Thinking it was about the time, Hajime took out the pendant which was the proof of having conquered Guryuen Great Volcano from his breast pocket. The design of the pendant was of a woman hanging a lantern, and there was a hole on the lantern, becoming hollow. Even while staying at Elysian, Hajime had taken out the pendant and held it towards the moon, and also supplied it with magic power, but there was no change in particular. Just what should be done to the moon and pendant was what he thought while tilting his head. For now, Hajime tried to hold the pendant towards the moon. The moon could be seen from whole of the lantern design. He waited for a while, but there was no change. Hajime, not understanding what to do, sighed and began to try another method. But at that time, change appeared in the pendant.
Whoa, the light is gathering in the lantern. It's beautiful.
It is a mysterious sight, even though the lantern part is actually hollow.
Shia was admiring the sight, and Kaori, with shining eyes, agreed with her.
Just as the two said, the lantern part was absorbing the moonlight, and light began to accumulate inside it. In accordance to that, the hollow part was filled by the light. Also becoming interested in it, Yue and Tio watched the pendant Hajime held up.
Even though I've also tried it last night.
Master. It might be because it won't do if it isn't here, right?
It might be just as Tio guessed. Before long, the lantern finished accumulating the light, and the pendant was now clad in light. At the same time, a light shot straight from the lantern, pointing to a certain location on the sea's surface. What an exact production! Truly different from me ladies.
It is. It really is fantasy-like. Even I'm rather impressed by it.
Guided by the moonlight, it was such a romance-like thing, which made not only Hajime, but also you and the rest raised voices of admiration. The impression gained by Shia, just like Hajime and Yue, was strong as someone who had entered Milady's. Milady, Great Dungeon. The party didn't know how long the light would be released from the pendant's lantern, so the submarine immediately sailed, led by the light. The sea at night was dark, or maybe it would be better to say that everything was black, and even though the surface of them was still bright because of the moonlight, they were led into the waters, and thus everything instantly turned dark. The light released by the submarine and the pendant was the only thing cutting through the dark sea. The light, passing through the glass made from front crystal, a type of sturdy and transparent ore, in front of the submarine, was pointing at the bottom of the sea. The location pointed was the rock wall zone of the bottom of the sea. Numerous distorted rock walls were joined to form a mountain range. It was a place the party had searched during the daytime, but it resulted in nothing. But when the submarine approached the rock pointed by the pendant light, a tremor began to generate, along with a strong rumbling sound. The sound and tremor was caused by the rock wall that began to move. One of the rock's part was split in two, opening to the right and left like a door. The dark road lead inside was as though it was inviting one to the netherworld. I see, so that's why we can't find it no matter how much we tried. How foolish of me to think we will be able to find it if we were lucky.
There's no helping it, but it was fun.
You was right. Don't you think it was an amazing experience to sightsee the bottom of the sea of this different world?
Hajime's shoulders drooped as he understood the search they did during daytime was in vain, but it seemed Yue and Kaori Git enjoyed it. Hajime moved the submarine and the party entered the crack. The pendant's lantern still had around half of its accumulated light, but it had stopped releasing the light. Only the submarine's light was shining inside the dark sea now.
This one had thought this since hearing about the bottom sea ruin, but wouldn't it be impossible for ordinary people to enter this labyrinth without this submarine thing?
It's impossible unless one using a strong barrier.
It will also be impossible if they can't control the air, light, and water current at the same time, eh?
But it is necessary to conquer Guryuin Great Volcano to come here, so I think people who are capable of conquering the Great Dungeon are able to enter.
Maybe we are supposed to use spatial magic. Entering deeper on the underwater road, Hajime's party were considering other ways to conquer this dungeon without a submarine. They were impressed by the fantastic entrance, but indeed, once they thought about it normally, unless there were several top-class magic users, it was impossible to enter the dungeon, a troublesome point similar to the other great dungeons. With caution, Hajime's party watched the bottom sea through the front crystal. And at that time,
Ooh, whoa!
Nah.
Wawa!
Kaya.
What the?
the side of the submarine suddenly received an impact, and immediately, the submarine was thrown towards a direction. Just like the time they were thrown into the magma's swift current, the submarine was turned around and around, but the party had already came up with a countermeasure for it. Using the gravity stone installed at the bottom of the submarine to increase the weight, the party stabilized the it.
I don't want to taste this twirling again.
Shaya's face paled as she recalled the time they got swept underground of Guryuin Great Volcano and shook her head to stop recalling it. Didn't we recover immediately? I already said it'll be okay from now on. But more importantly, just where does this current lead to? While smiling wryly at such a Shia, Hajime observed the outside through front crystal. The green light stone's light was circulating around the dark cave, letting him picture the surrounding. From what he could see, the party seemed to have been swept by the current into a huge, round cave. While operating the submarine, Hajime's party advanced by following the current. After a while, the farsight stone installed in the stern caught innumerable objects shining in reddish black. They seemed to be approaching us. Well, they are most likely demonic beasts clad in reddish black magic power, huh?
Shall we?
When Hajime muttered, Yue, who was sitting by his side, was gathering magic power in her hand, and said in gangster-like tone, but she still looked cute. No, let's use weapon here. I also want to confirm their effectiveness. Hajime operated the gimmick on the back of the submarine. Then, numerous pet bottle-sized torpedoes that had dyed Enkadi's oasis in red was launched. Hajime thoroughly painted them so they looked like smiling mischievously sharks. Because they were inside the swift current, the torpedoes' propulsion could only move them to a small degree, and it resulted with them scattering like sea mines. The submarine advanced ahead, and before long the numerous demonic beasts, clad in reddish-black magic power, with appearance of flying fish, entered the cluster of torpedoes. Grand explosions generated in succession from behind the submarine, and a large amount of bubbles wrapped the group of flying fish look-alike. Afterwards, the bodies of flying fish look-alike were tore apart by the impact, and the flesh and blood were scattered from inside the appearing bubbles, looking like seaweed thrown into a swift current. Yep, it has more power than before. The improvement is a success.
Hajime-san! Just now there was something with eyes of a fish being swept outside.
Shia, those aren't actually dead fishes.
Once again, it makes me think the artifacts Hajime-kun made are a foul.
From then on, Hajime's party advanced, while easily beating the flying fish look-alike they frequently encountered. They advanced without knowing how long it would be. At that time, they began to notice the sense of incompatibility of the unchanging scenery. Hajime's party arrived at a place where the surrounding walls had been randomly destroyed. When they looked carefully, torn heads of flying fish look-alike were placed between the rock walls with their hollow eyes looking at the sea. Isn't this the place we passed before?
Seems so. Are we going in circles?
Apparently, Hajime's party were going in circles in an annulus ring cave. They had thought the great dungeon was ahead of them, so they advanced, but Hajime was doubtful that he had mistaken a road here, as if it was a normal bottom sea cave. Resultantly, the party now didn't advance according to the laid road and carefully searched the surrounding for any clues. As a result,
Ah, Hajime-kun, there's one there too.
with this, it is the 5th place. The party discovered several places inside the cave that were carved with 50 centimeters long crest of Melgene. The carved crest of Melgene was a pentagram with lines connected to each 5 points, and the center was carved with crescent moon-like design. It was similar to the 5 places in this annulus ring cave. For a thorough examination, Hajime's party approached the crest they first discovered. Because they were exposed to the swift current, Hajime took care in controlling the submarine. Well, there are 5 places with pentagrams, so if the remaining light inside the pendant is used... Muttering, Hajime took out the pendant he wore on his neck and held it before the front crystal. Then the pendant reacted and light was released straight from the lantern. Following that, the light touched the crest and the crest shone.
It will be disastrous for people who come here using magic. If they didn't notice this immediately, their magic power would be depleted.
Just as Kaori said, this RPG-like method would be too cruel for people who somehow survived only by maintaining their magic. It might be because the objective was to make them reach their limit in a different sense than Goryuen Great Volcano. Afterwards, 3 more crests in their own location was poured with light from the lantern, and the party arrived before the last crest. The light collected inside the lantern decreased when it was released to light up the crest, and the remaining light had enough for only 1 more usage. Hajime held up the pendant and poured the last crest with the light. Finally, a way to advance from this annulus ring cave opened. With a rumbling sound, the wall of the cave split in 2. Not much happened as the party advanced into the interior, but the water was descending right to below. Then, the submarine was wrapped with floating feeling as it was falling down. Oh, shh.
Yeah? Yeah?
Nuo!
How?
Respectively, the 5 of them raised different scream. Hajime was enduring the floating feeling between his groin. Then, the submarine hit the hard ground with a roaring sound. The severe impact was transmitted into the interior, and Kaori, whose body wasn't that strong, raised a groan. Kaori, are you okay?
I am okay. More importantly, here is...
While frowning, Kaori looked at the outside through the front crystal, and unlike a while ago, the outside was not seawater, but a cavity. Because there was no sign of demonic beast, Hajime's... Outside the submarine was a huge hemispherical space. When they looked above, there was a large hole. but they didn't know what kind of principle caused the water's surface to sway to and fro. Without any drop of water, it was swaying to and fro, and it was the place where Hajime's party fallen to. Looks like here is the real thing. Rather than a bottom sea ruin, it is a cave, though.
It's good that there isn't water everywhere.
Returning the submarine into treasure box, Hajime urged Yue and the others to advance into the passage they could be seen inside the cave, but he called out to Yue before the party moved. Yue. With just that, Yue immediately created a barrier around them. Momentarily, laser-like water current attacked them like meteors from above. The laser made of compressed water was similar to rupture U used in Ryzen Great Dungeon. If one gets hit by it, a hole would be easily created in their body. However, Yue's barrier was extremely strong even if it was put cast in a hurry. As a proof, it easily blocked the incoming attack from above. Because Hajime promptly perceived the rise in magic power and killing intent, Yue who promptly answered him, the surprise attack was no longer a surprising one. Naturally, the moment Hajime called out to Yue, Shia and Tio had guessed the attack and was undisturbed by it. However, Kaori didn't react the same way as them.
Kia!
The too sudden and the intense attacks made her instinctively raise a scream. She immediately clung on Hajime, who was beside her.
I am sorry.
No, don't mind it. Sneaking a glance at Hajime, whom she parted from, Kaori would usually blushing here, but Kaori's complexion didn't look good. She seemed to be a little depressed from exposing her disgraceful behavior when she clinged onto Hajime. Also, she was once again shocked by Yue's proficiency in magic. When she was still with Kuki's party, Kaoru also used defense magic to assist Suzu. She trained hard, and her activation speed was not inferior to a barrier master like Suzu. Even so, when compared it to Yu, her defensive magic was child's play. She had felt that when Hajime's party rescued them from Orcus Great Dungeon vertical bar, she understood. But she pushed her inferiority complex into the bottom of her mind because only when she could do that would she be able to stay by Hajime's side. However, the question whether she would only be a burden crossed her mind again. Are you all right?
Nothing. There's nothing wrong.
I see. Kaori immediately tried to deceive him by making a forced smile. Although Hajime slightly narrowed his eyes towards her action, he didn't say anything. His action made Kaori feel a little lonely, but relieved at the same time. Then she noticed Yue, who continued to block the rain of dread, staring at her. Her eyes seemed to see through Kaori's heart, which made Kaori put strength in her eyes and stared back at Yue. Kaori would not let her feelings be laughed at like that time. After all, if that happens, the pretty girl before her who received Hajime's love would stop to recognize her as a threat. That was something she wouldn't be able to endure. Receiving Kaori's powerful gaze, Yue smiled a little and once again looked above. At the same time, Tio fired her flame to burn the ceiling. With that, the culprit of the attack fell in a tatter. It was a barnacle-like demonic beast. A lot of them were sticking on the ceiling, shooting rupture from the hole above. A physiological, disgust-inviting spectacle. Maybe because it was still an underwater creature, it was weak to flames and was immediately burnt by Tio's flame magic, Spiral Flame. After defeating those barnacle look-alike, Hajime's party walked into the passage. They went lower than the previous room, and even the seawater reached their thighs. It's hard to walk.
Should I get off?
With splashing sound as they advanced through the seawater, Hajime started to complain. And so, Yue, who was sitting on his shoulder, asked. Yue was carried by Hajime because, with her height, she would be soaked faster than anyone else. Hajime returned a gaze, saying there's no problem, while he ignoring Kaori's and Shia's envying gaz. Then, he put his hand on Yue's thigh so she would not fall, firmly fixing her in place. Yue was also wrapping her hand around Hajime's neck. Kaori and Shia were sending even more and more envying gazes, but they were now focusing on another problem, an attack from demonic beasts. The appearing demonic beasts looked like shurikens. They moved in a straight line towards their target while rotating in high speed, but sometimes they also curved on the fly. Hajime smoothly pulled Donner and unhesitatingly fired, shooting down everything in the air. Although some died with their bodies still intact, the dead demonic beasts which floated on the surface of water had a shape of a starfish. In addition, having perceived sea snake-like demonic beasts swimming fast in the water below them, Yu skewered them using Spear of Ice. Aren't they too weak? Except Kaori. All of the party members agreed with Hajime's mutter. Enemies inside a great dungeon were theoretically strong individually, and became troublesome if more than one appeared. However, the starfishes and sea snakes were similar to the demonic beasts who attacked them in the sea once they got out of the sea volcano, or at least that week. Truly unbefitting of a great dungeon's demonic beast. Excluding Kaori, who didn't know much about Great Dungeon, everyone was tilting their heads, but their answer would be shown inside the huge space on the other end of the passage. The heck? As soon as Hajime's party entered the space, translucent jelly-like body blocked the entrance to the passage.
Let me do it! Iria!
Immediately, Shaya, who was at the rear, swung Doryuken to break the wall. However, the surface only scattered, but the jelly-like wall didn't break. Following that, the scattered remains stuck on Shaya's breasts.
Hiya! What's with this thing?
Shia raised a voice of confusion and shock. When Hajime's party turned around, the clothing around Shia's breasts was melting. The jelly thing wrapped around her clothing and undergarment, and Shia's voluptuous twin hills began to become more and more exposed.
Shia, don't move!
Immediately, Tio perfectly burnt the sprayed jelly thingy. A little part of Shia's breast where the jelly was attached to was swollen red. It looked like the jelly blocking the entrance had a rather strong acidity. There's more coming, Hajime warned, and right after they moved away from the wall of jelly, numerous tentacles attacked from above. They looked sharp, like spears, but their appearance was similar to the jelly that was blocking the entrance. Honestly, the combination of UA as defense and TOA as offense feels like a foul play. An impregnable defense and at the same time a one-sided offense. That's why Hajime could do nothing but mutter so. Seeing it as a chance, Shia was slowly approaching Hajime's side while empathizing her exposed cleavage. Truly sly, as she began to pleading with upward glance while blushing.
Excuse me, Hajime-san. It's burnt, so can Hajime-san rub it with medicine?
Don't you see our situation?
Well, I think it'll be okay, because Yue-san and Tio-san are unbeatable. Also, if I don't do some appeal in this situation, I will be overshadowed by Kaori-san too,
Shia said while approaching Hajime to show off the burn on her cleavage. Then,
Bring the holy ground and healing unto this place heaven's blessing.
Kaori healed Shia's injury while smiling nicely. Even though it was a chance to get my breasts touched, Shia grieved while everyone was looked at her coldly.
Hajime, these jelly seems to melt magic too.
While he was giving the grieving Shia a cold look, Yue said to him, when he looked at it, he could see parts of Yue's barrier melting.
This one thought so. This one felt it was strange that the previous flame lost its force. It seems it even melt the magic power inside the flame.
If what Tio said was right, then these jelly was capable of melting magic power. It was a strong and troublesome ability, suitable for a great dungeon's demonic beast. Though it must have heard what Hajime thought of it in his mind. Finally, a figure of a demonic beast that was manipulating the jelly had appeared. The thing appeared as it was, permeating through the small cracks in the ceiling, halted in mid-air, and began to reshape. A translucent humanoid with fin-like limbs, and its whole body carried innumerable specks sparkling in red, with two feelers-like thing growing on its head. The figure that was swimming mid-air with its fin-like limbs was just like a Cleone. Well, a 10-meter-tall Cleone was nothing but a monster after all. Without any preliminary movement, tentacles were shot out from the Cleone's huge body. At the same time, jelly was spraying from its head just like a shower.
Yue, tack it too. Leave the defense to me. Divine interruption.
Using the derived skill, delayed activation, Kaori activated the divine interruption she chanted beforehand. Nodding at Kaori, Yu went to Tio, and together they fired flame towards the huge Cleone. Shia also changed Ryuken to firing mode and shot it. The Cleone was hit by all of their attacks, and its body exploded and scattered in all directions. One hit kill, Yu and the other two raised a satisfied expression, but Hajime let out a warning to them. Not yet. Its presence is still here. Kaori, maintain the barrier. What's with this? The demonic beast's presence is all over the room. Hajime's perception abilities caught the presence of the demonic beast all over the room. Moreover, everywhere his magic eye was dyed in reddish-black color, as if the demonic beast was the room itself. It was a situation he had never encountered before, so naturally Hajime's eyes sharpened. Right after, as if to sense his anxiety, the Cleone that was scattered in all directions was regenerated in no time. Moreover, on its belly were the starfish look-alike and sea snakes they encountered and defeated. They melted while raising sizzling sound.
It seems the demonic beasts this one thought as weak were truly ordinary demonic beasts, and they seem to be this guy's meal, Master. It doesn't matter if it keeps regenerating, but where is its magic stone?
Now that Tio-san mentioned it, why can't I see the magic stone although it is transparent?
Agreeing to Tio's assumption, Shia was now looking at Hajime, but Hajime had a troubled expression while he looked for the location of magic stone of the huge Cleone.
Hajime?
When Yue called him, Hajime scratched his head and reported what he saw. None. That guy doesn't have magic stone. His words made everyone dumbfounded.
Hajime-kun? For it to not have magic stone, then does it mean it isn't a demonic beast?
I don't know, however. If I must say, that jelly's body, all of them are magic stone. My magic eye saw that guy's whole body is dyed in reddish-black color. Also, be careful, since this whole room is also dyed in the same color. Or maybe we are already inside that guy's stomach. So who are already inside that guy's stomach? The same time, Hajime told them about the shocking fact, the huge Cleone began to attack them again. This time, not only did the tentacles attack while the jelly rained down, but its feet entered the seawater and some parts of its body were fired like a torpedo. Hajime took out a black, large rifle from the treasure box. The large rifle had a gas cylinder thing installed where the magazine should be loaded, and also an unbelievably large caliber. That was natural. After all, it wasn't a rifle, it was a flamethrower. The flame ore in tar form made the flamethrower sprayed flame of 3000 C. It was not aimed at the huge Cleone, and neither at the tentacles nor the sprayed jelly. It was aiming at the wall that was giving reddish-black reaction. The Cleone was left to you and the other two. Maybe because the huge Cleone had a mimetic ability, the wall seemed to be not out of ordinary, but the flame released by Hajime burnt it and peeled it off from the wall just like a wallpaper. Hajime was slightly relieved the wall was not another huge Cleone. However, the transparent jelly kept appearing from the cracks on the wall, no matter how much he burnt it, and finally it even appeared from under his feet. His shoe soles generated sizzling sound. The attack on the real body by Yue and the other two was also increasing in intensity, and even the huge Cleone seemed to have finally gotten serious as jelly sprung up from the entire wall with a tremendous momentum. Moreover, the water level had raised before the party were aware of it. At first it was around the thigh level, but now it has risen to around the waist. As for Yue, her chest area was already soaked by the water. Yue and the other two had defeated the huge Cleone so many times, but the surrounding jelly immediately gathered, and the end of the fight was nowhere in sight. It was a terrible situation if they didn't find a way to defeat it, and they would die by drowning. While their fighting power was being reduced, they wouldn't be able to keep besieging the huge Cleone. Even if they cast barrier magic and entered the submarine, it would melt unless they find the way to defeat it. As such, Hajime decided to withdraw. However, all of the passages had been blocked by the jelly. Hajime frantically looked around. Then, he discovered a crack on the ground, which generated a whirl. I will at least recover us from this situation. There's also a place under the ground. Well, I don't know where it is connected to, so brace yourselves.
Niche.
Yes!
Understood.
Okay,
Receiving everyone's answer, Hajime, while turning the flamethrower around to burn the incoming jelly, used transmutation towards the crack. The crack was forced to expand, and gradually, a deep hole was opened. While still underwater, Hajime took out a cylinder with length of 15 centimeters and diameter of 3 centimeters. In the middle was the mouthpiece part of a snorkel tube. It was a small oxygen cylinder. It was created using the ore imbued with spatial magic using creation magic. Thus, the space inside where the oxygen was put into expanded just like treasure box. However, while he was making preparation in Ellison, Hajime had prioritized the broken and lost equipment. In addition, it was hard for him to use spatial magic, so the space created was much narrower compared to treasure box. Because of that, the small oxygen cylinder can only hold out for around 30 minutes. Setting the time limitation in the corner of his mind, Hajime repeatedly transmuted the water, and before long, Hajime took out pile bunker from treasure box once there was no more reaction on the ground. After fixing the anchor under the water, it charged. Following that, he pulled the trigger to break the floor. Inside the water, a muffled thundering sound generated and spread with vibration. In the next moment, water flowed into the penetrated hole with tremendous momentum. The seawater that had reached around the waist began to flow mightily all of a sudden, which resulted in Yue and the other three to be swept and thrown into the hole. Inside the swift current, Hajime desperately braced against the current and took out a gigantic boulder and numerous incendiary grenades from treasure box. Then, he threw them at the same time he was swept into the space below, alongside with Yu and the other three. Behind him, muffled roaring sounds rang out. However, he was unable to confirm whether he was successful in gaining even a little time against the huge Cleone's pursuit. Huff, huff, are you okay, Kaori?
Yeah, somehow. Everyone is.
In front of Kaori, who was coughing from drinking a large amount of seawater, were Hajime, whose hand was coiled on her waist, and a pure white sand beach. There was nothing else beside those around her, but she could densely see packed mangrove-like trees in the distance and the surface of the waving sea high in the sky. The seawater was like a barrier, preventing any intruder. It was a vast space. Looks like we are getting separated. Well, I gave everyone a smaller version of treasure box, so they should be able to do something by themselves, Hajime lightly said after letting go of Kaori and fixed his hair. However, Kaori's mind seems to be somewhere else. While watching Hajime stand up and began to change his clothing, Kaori recalled what happened a while ago. Hajime's party attempted a strategic retreat from the huge Cleone. The place they fell into was a gigantic, spherical space with tens of tunnels, where they were spouting seawater with tremendous force. Or maybe it could be said that they were flowing from there, a place with storm-like and messy current. Swept by the swift current, Hajime's party somehow managed to stick close together, but next the current mercilessly separated the party. Yue tried to control the current with magic, but it didn't work well because the current was too random. Shia controlled the weight of Doryukin in cooperation with Tioa, a fine play. Hajime had actually wanted to take out the submarine and ride it, but it was impossible inside the swift current. Clenching his teeth, Hajime took out ultra-heavy compression ore and tried to use the weight to overcome the current just like Shia. At that time, by luck, he saw Yue getting swept towards him, and Yue would meet up with Hajime thanks to the current. Shia and Tio had already disappeared into a tunnel somewhere, and their figures could no longer be seen inside the space. Hajime tried to reach out to Yue so she wouldn't get separated from him, but Kaori's figure was being swept to the lower side, had entered his view. The pained gaze of Kaori's met Hajime's. He previously reached out to Yue before him, but his and Kaori's gaze had indeed met. There were two choices. If he catches Yue, Kaori would be swept alone into a tunnel. The same thing would happen to Yue if he was to catch Kaori. The current Hajime could only choose one of them. Within that moment, it felt like eternity. Hajime exchanged gazes with Yue, and he made a decision. Using the weight from the ultra-heavy compressed ore he took out from treasure box, Hajime rushed below, and then he caught Kaori. Kaori's eyes were wide in surprise, but the two were immediately exposed to an even stronger swift current. Together, the two were thrown into a tunnel. While being swept away, Hajime activated Vajra to protect Kaori in his arms, enduring it even when he was thrown at a rock wall. Then, he was able to see light coming from above once the current weakened and went up. And there was the pure white sandy beach spread across the coastline.
Nee, Hajime-kun. Why did you save me?
Huh? Kaori questioned Hajime, whose back was turned towards her. Hajime only tilted his head, thinking, what kind of Geston was that?
Why did you save me and not Yue?
Well, Kaori seemed to be dying and Yue can do something by herself. Yue's eyes also told me to save Kaori.
You really trust her, eh?
Isn't that natural? We are partners, you know? The already depressed Kaori was even more depressed after hearing the answer. Suddenly a shadow stretched over the downcast Kaori. Puzzled, Kaori looked up and there was Hajime's face very close to her own. His eyes and nose were right before her, a distance that would conclude in a kiss if he moved even a little closer. Kaori felt as if she was sucked by Hajime's eyes, and suddenly her cheeks were pulled.
Ift hute, wafta u ying.
Kaori protested with teary eyes. However, Hajime ignored Kaori's protest and played with her soft cheeks without reserve for a while. After finally being released, Kaori looked up with a reproachful gaze while rubbing her red cheeks, but Hajime only snorted with, If you have time to be depressed, then it's better to use and move. We're inside a great dungeon, you know. Just until when will you stay wet like this? Or are you trying to gain my sympathy? Hajime's sharp words made Kaori's face instantly reddened. It was of shame. She noticed what he unexpressed said. Isn't this the wrong place for that?
There's no such a thing. I was just daydreaming. I will change my clothes soon. Sorry.
Kaori hurriedly stood up and began to take off her clothes after taking out substitute clothes from mini treasure box, around the size of a house's storage, that was given to her before the party left Elysian. Hajime nonchalantly turned his back towards her. The normal Kaori would do an approach by saying, "It's okay to watch," though embarrassed, but the current Kaori hurriedly finished changing her clothes without saying anything.
I'm done. So, what should we do?
Let's see. Even if we go to seabed again, we still don't know where the others are. But there's nothing we can do other than keep searching. Those girls would probably do so as well. After looking at the jungle nearby, Hajime turned around. Kaori nodded at him while smiling, a smile hiding her depressed heart. Hajime slightly narrowed his eyes at Kaori's smile, but he didn't say anything in the end and started to walk. Advancing along the pure white sandy beach, creating sounds as they walked, the two entered the jungle. The dense trees and bushes were cut by Hajime. Kaori was only following him from behind. Then Hajime suddenly halted and turned towards Kaori, put his hand on the back of Kaori's head as if to embrace her.
Fue? Hajime-kun? What's with this sudden...
Kaori blushed, but Hajime immediately separated, and she instantly paled when she saw the thing on Hajime's hand. It was a spider. With size almost as big as a palm, it was moving its 12 legs with violet liquid dripping from it. Some of the legs grew like a normal spider, while some grew from its back, a structure expressing it was capable of moving using both sides. It looked disgusting. Don't let your guard down, okay? A great dungeon is vastly different compared to the surface of Orcus. Don't think of it as the same or else you'll experience pain.
Sorry. I will be careful. The spider Hajime caught didn't have a magic stone, a normal poisonous spider. The fact that she was almost killed by a creature other than a demonic beast, and how Hajime helped her, made Kaori even more depressed. When she was still in Koki's party, she was an all-rounder. However, in Hajime's party, she isn't at all useful. It made Kaori panic more and more inwardly.
As such, Kaori put even more attention towards the surroundings, which caused the conversation between the two to lessen, and they got out of the jungle with a subtle atmosphere between them. Ahead of them was, isn't this the so-called ship's graveyard?
Amazing! Those are sailing ships, but the size...
In the rocky area ahead of the jungle were several partly rotted sailing ships lodged. The sailing ships were around 100 meters in length at the lowest, and in the far distant was an even bigger one with at least 300 meters in length. The bizarre spectacle made Hajime and Kaori unconsciously halted their advance. However, it didn't take a long time for Hajime and Kaori to regain their senses and entered the ship's graveyard. They advanced by passing through the gaps between rocks, sometimes passing over them, while at other times they walked on the ships. Even so, there are only battleships here.
But only the biggest one. There seems to be a passenger boat. It has luxurious decorations on it.
The ships in this graveyard didn't have cannons located at the starboard side like those battleship sail type on Earth. Even so, Hajime was able to conclude they were battleships because there were marks of fierce battle on all of the ships. From the appearance of the ships, they seem to have received magic attacks. Some have their masts cleanly cut, burnt, carbonized decks, and petrified ropes and nets. They didn't have any cannon, so they used long-range magic to defeat the enemies, which was a battle method imaginable from the marks remained. Then, Hajime's guess was proven to be a fact when he and Kaori were halfway through the ship's graveyard. What the?
Hajime-kun, the surroundings are...
When they felt they heard shout of many men, all of a sudden, the surrounding scenery began to distort. Hajime and Kaori stopped walking from the surprise and they observed the surroundings to observe what was happening. The surrounding distortion became even more intense, and before they were aware of it, Hajime and Kaori were already on a ship's deck above the vast ocean. Following that, they looked at their surroundings. It was not the ship's graveyard, but hundreds of sailing ships divided into two groups, confronting each other. Above the ships were people raising their weapons while shouting. The heck is this?
Hajime-kun? Am I currently inside a dream? Hajime-kun, you are here, right? Right?
Both Hajime and Kaori were taken aback, but they somehow managed to get out of their confusion. However, they weren't able to look at their surroundings. While they did so, a big spark rose into the sky, generating firework-like loud voices followed by the hundreds of ships moving out simultaneously. The fleet on the side of the ship Hajime and Kaori rode on also moved out after the firework rose. Oh!
Kaya!
Flame bullets fired, accompanied by roaring sounds, and created holes in the ship's bodies. Huge tornadoes advanced, aiming at the masts. The sea's surface froze, stopping the ships, and bullets of gray-colored sphere instantly petrified everything. Even the deck Hajime and Kaori were on was hit by the flame bullets and began to blaze up grandly. The ship's crews immediately activated magic to draw up the seawater and extinguish the fire. It was literally a battlefield where innumerable people and ships fought on. The fired magic, clad in killing intent, grazed their skins. Hajime and Kaori absent-mindedly watching these spectacle, and once again fire bullets fired from behind them. The bullets' courses were aimed straight towards Hajime and Kaori. Hajime buried his question of why did they suddenly were involved in this war in his head, and he pulled out Donner because it was okay to kill everyone because they attacked first. Thus, he intercepted the fire bullets using the railgun. The bullet fired was accompanied by explosive sound and a flash, but unexpectedly, it didn't even hit the flame bullets much more. Intercepting them, the bullet flew into the sky, and it disappeared. What? Raising surprised voice for the nth times, Hajime embraced Kaori by his side and began to evade.
Wait, I will obstruct them. Light severance.
With Kaori's chant, the beginner-level defense magic of light attribute appeared. Hajime tried to evade because the unknown magic kept going even after their cores were hit, but Kaori had activated her magic and couldn't move away from there. Reluctantly, he activated Vajra and waited for the flame bullets. However, Hajime's worry proved to be groundless because Kaori's barrier completely blocked the flame bullets. With dubious expression, Hajime thought whether he just misfired while tilting his head, and he once again fired at the incoming flame bullets. Even this time, Hajime's magic eye indeed saw the cores being hit, but the bullet just passed through the flame bullets and flew towards the day after tomorrow. Is that it? Seeing that, Hajime was guessing why his attack wasn't effective and decided to try another method of attacking. Kaori tried to put up another barrier to block the incoming flame bullets, but Hajime stopped her and activated Wind Claw in Donner. Following that, he evaded, and at the same time he slashed the flame bullets using Wind Claw. This time, the flame bullets didn't pass through and slashed in two.
Hajime-kun?
It doesn't seem to be an illusion, nor was it a real thing. The physical attack didn't effective, but attacks that contain magic power are effective. Good grief, what's with this situation?
Hajime spat a sigh from this troublesome situation, and Gua, an agonized voice, rang right from behind him. While wondering what it was, he turned around and there was a young man crouching while suppressing his abdomen, while his other hand was holding a cutlass. Looking carefully, there was a pool of blood below him and blood-covered icicle rolling nearby. He must have been shot with the icicle.
Are you okay?
Kaori immediately raised her voice while approaching him, and then she used her healing magic. A pure white light released from her and wrapped the man. He should be healed in a blink of an eye because Kaori was a healer, or so she thought, but the result was unexpected. The moment the young man received Kaori's healing magic, he turned into light particles and disappeared.
Why?
After a little pondering, Hajime told the confused Kaori what he thought had happened. Wasn't it because the effect and attribute of the magic didn't matter as long as it carried magic power?
Then I just killed that person.
Kaori, this is not reality. Just think of it as an illusion where we can move freely. Besides, you can't call something that disappeared by being healed a human.
Hajime-kun, you are right. I am sorry that I was confused a little there, but I am okay now.
Though slight, Hajime said words of concern to Kaori. However, Kaori didn't feel happy like the usual her, only drooping her shoulders, apologizing. Then, she smiled to smooth things over. Seeing her reaction made Hajime inadvertently muttered the thing he had thought since earlier. You keep apologizing, eh?
Hey, did you say something?
No, nothing. Hajime moved his gaze from Kaori. It was not because of the subtle atmosphere drifting around Kaori, but because he felt ominous presences. When he looked around, the soldiers were shouting and attacking the nearby ships, and before they were aware of it, several men with dark gazes were looking at Hajime and Kaori. Kaori noticed Hajime's gaze and looked at the direction he was watching, and the men immediately came to attack Hajime and Kaori.
For the god. Long live Aunt-sama! Pagans, die for our god!
They were in frenzy. With bloodshot eyes, they declared while scattering saliva around. Completely abnormal. He was able to guess it was a war between countries from how the fleets looked like, and he finally understood the reason for it. It was a religious war. If he strained his ears, he could hear the other soldiers and the other fleets were shouting similar things. However, they were shouting different gods' name. Kaori could only stand in blank surprise inside the frenzied atmosphere. Embracing Kaori from behind, Hajime thrust out and fired Donner over his shoulder. Only, the fired thing was not a bullet, but mass of pure magic power. Using magic power compression and magic power emission, derived from magic power manipulation, he was able to blow off magic power without affecting the target physically. In a sense, it was a flawless technique to disarm the target, because human and even demonic beasts wouldn't be able to move if their magic power was exhausted. This move had always been kept inside of him because he would not use such a lukewarm method on his enemy. However, this lukewarm method was the most useful in this situation. The bright red bullet fired by Donner momentarily cut through the space and pierced the forehead of one of the frenzied cutlass-swinging soldier. Without stopping, the bullet hit the soldier behind the previous one too, and their bodies instantly dispersed. "Kaori, we are going to jump! Don't bite your tongue!"
Hey, Kia!
It would be troublesome if they were surrounded on the deck, so Hajime jumped using aerodynamic while embracing Kaori. Kaori screamed from the powerful momentum. Kicking the soldier on the crow's nest, Hajime landed in one of 4 crow's nests on the masts. Below them, the frenzied soldiers were looking up at Hajime and Kaori with bloodshot eyes. Even though there were the enemies from other countries too, somehow some of the men were targeting Hajime and Kaori. Moreover, the ones targeting them didn't have any distinction between allies and enemies. Their numbers keeps increasing, one after another, just like a bad case of contagious virus. Before even a moment passed, and in front of their own enemies, the soldiers suddenly stopped moving and twisted their heads, staring at Hajime and Kaori. They immediately came crowding towards the two like a horror movie. The frenzied air even made Kaori pale. "Now then, what shall we do to get out of this disgusting space?"
Maybe there's something like an exit?
"We are in the middle of the sea, you know."
Maybe there's an exit in one of these ships? See, something like wherever door?
Kaori recalled, and compared it to the convenient tool of the blue cat robot. Looking at the surroundings, Hajime frowned and objected her idea because the ships were too numerous. "From what I can see, there's at least 600 ships here. It's impossible to search one by one. Don't you think we'll be able to find the exit faster if the war ended?"
Indeed. There are also the sunken ship. Then shall we end the war?
"End it, I see. Time to kill everyone, huh?" Kaori also can say something extreme, eh?
I don't mean that.
Yup, that must be it. No other thing comes to my mind, and I like it better this way. Firing bullets of magic power and shooting through the several soldiers climbing using the ropes on the mast, Hajime thought it would be better if he had make a magic gun. He thought so while he continued firing the bright red bullets along with remote control derived from magic power manipulation, making them intercepted the incoming flame bullets. "Kaori, I know you aren't proficient in offensive magic, but even healing magic becomes offensive magic here. And even if we don't know how to escape from here, it is the truth that we are being attacked, so let's knock them all down."
Oh, okay.
Hearing Hajime's words, Kaori began her chant with resolute expression while trembling. The frenzied battlefield seemed to shave off at Kaori's mind, but she absolutely didn't want to show a disgraceful behavior to the important one beside her. Hajime was glaring at the surroundings as if protecting her. Looking down, allies and foes were mixed as they boarded the ship, killing each other. Unlike what happened when Hajime and Kaori attacked, the killing in this illusion was full of... On the deck were someone's entrails, cut limbs, and splattered heads. Everyone was repeatedly shouting for the god, pagan, and divine punishment, with frenzied eyes as they spread killing intent. Within the fresh blood of the soldiers scattered just like a storm of cherry blossom, the crow's nest were Hajime and Kaori. No, it was more like the soldiers were obstinately targeting Hajime and Kaori. Time to time, bright red bullets flew about in all directions, shooting through the enemies. Furthermore, they flew around Hajime and Kaori to protect them, positioned as both offense and defense at the same time. However, the frenzied soldiers weren't even worried, repeatedly attempted suicide attacks. Tens of the soldiers used flight magic, while there were those who approached by going from one mast to another. It could be seen that the fight was concentrated on the ship where Hajime and Kaori rode. Hajime's magic eye also caught the fluctuation of magic power of highest-ranked magic from the hand of the magicians aiming at them. At the time, Hajime thought of sniping them, but Kaori's chant ended, and she activated highest-ranked magic of her.
People held out your arms, as this is the place where Holy Mother smiling at Scripture.
Then, ripple of light spread into the battlefield with Kaori as its center. The ripple throbbed as it expanded for so many times, reaching 1 kilometer in radius. The enemy, who touched by the ripple, was wrapped by light. Highest-ranked healing magic of light attribute, Scripture. It was a super wide-ranged healing magic with effect of healing everyone inside its area. The range itself was dependent on the amount of user's magic power and proficiency, but at its worst, its effective range was 500 meters in radius. Moreover, if the user gave out the sign beforehand, it would be able to heal specific object, and normally this magic was used with tens of magicians and took a lot of time to chant along with its stupidly gigantic magic array. To be able to activate it in only 1-2 minutes alone was impossible, unless one was a cheat-like character. At the same time, the light of Scripture activated by Kaori wrapped the battlefield. All soldiers inside the effective area had their bodies dispersed without distinction of ally or foe. When the magic ended, Kaori's body tilted from magic power exhaustion and was thus promptly supported by Hajime. A mass reproduction of the Mary Celeste, You did great, Kaori!
No, should I say as expected of you?
There's no such a thing. Hajime-kun and the others are far more amazing.
Honest praise from Hajime made Kaori's cheeks blush from embarrassed. She made a self-ridiculing smile as she thought Yue would be able to use more powerful magic quickly. Then she muttered replenish to replenish the lost magic power from the pendant given by Hajime. Hajime had improved the pendant with magic array and the ability of taking out the stocked magic power by chanting because Kaori was incapable of directly manipulating magic power. Hajime slightly knitted his eyebrows and wanted to say something when he saw Kaori's expression. But he put it aside for now because he had to deal with the new incoming enemies. The battle had restarted. With the ineffectiveness of physical attack, it was a situation where the large amount of soldiers didn't falter against any kind of attack as they battled on the ship. Normally, it might be a hard situation, but there were cheat-like monsters present. Big fleets of 2 countries were afterwards annihilated by the 2 humans in a span of 1 hour.
Sorry.
It's all right, just endure it. Immediately after the last soldiers were annihilated, their surroundings were once again distorted. They noticed that they had returned to ship's graveyard from before. Wondering if the annihilation was indeed the correct answer, Kaori immediately sighed in relief, ran to the nearby rock, and vomited. However, she vomited nothing since the dinner she ate had already been digested, and thus she felt a pain from trying to vomit. With tears accumulated in the corner of her eyes, Kaori used one hand to tell Hajime, "Don't come," to stop him. However, Hajime still approached her and rubbed her back. Kaori didn't want to show such a pitiful sight to him, but she felt comforted from the gentle and warm feelings transmitted to her back. Her nausea and spirit gradually recovered. Hajime took out apple juice-like drink from treasure box and presented it to her. Kaori obediently drank it heartily and her energy returned. The sweet and fresh taste flushed the sour taste of gastric juice.
Sorry.
Kaori, who knitted her eyebrows and apologized for the trouble, made Hajime narrowed his eyes. Well, I think it is inevitable. Even I feel disgusted by it. I never thought humans would be so frenzied because of their blind belief. Anyway, let's rest for now. Even I want to recover my considerably used magic power.
Say, Hajime-kun, what was that illusion? Is it related to these shipwreckages?
Kaori stood up and sat on the nearby rock, and then she asked him. Hajime took a little time to think before told her his conjecture. It is just a maybe, but I think the illusion might have been reproducing a battle in the past. Well, it seemed there's also some improvement to attack those challenging the dungeon. Or it might have been the concept of this dungeon.
Concept?
Yeah, Tio said it when we were in Guryu Great Volcano. She said, isn't it possible that each of the dungeon had its own concept prepared by the liberators? If that's true, then here is...
To know the misery brought by the mad gods, maybe?
I think so too. Continuing Hajime's words by muttering the answer, Kaori recalled the spectacle from before. Her face once again turned pale, and her body trembled as if she was suffering from a cold. What made Kaori felt sick was the madness from the soldiers. Their behavior and speech were exactly of those so-called fanatic, while she also couldn't help but feel disgusted from the killing. The people continued to laugh loudly in a frenzy, even when blood were spraying from their bodies. There were even those who died from gouging their own hearts out, raised it towards the sky as an offering to their gods. There was also an older brother who stabbed through his own younger brother just to attack Hajime and Kaori, while the younger one laughed proudly. War itself was a place filled with madness, but one they just saw was far too ghastly, and it was wage all for our gods, so... Seeing Kaori covering her mouth because she couldn't endure it, Hajime sat right beside Kaori and grasped Kaori's hand. He couldn't leave Kaori, who sickened by the madness, alone. Kaori was slightly surprised, looked at Hajime, relaxed, and squeezed Hajime's hand back.
Hajime-kun, thank you.
Don't mind it. I understand the pain from being exposed to the madness. I felt that when I fell into the abyss.
Then how? Wait, there's no need for you to answer. It was Yue-san, right?
Yeah, it was because of her. If I hadn't met her inside the abyss, I wonder how I would have ended up. Hajime looked into the distance in affection and nostalgia. He was surely recalling the time he met Yue. Seeing his expression made Kaori felt her chest squeeze.
It's mortifying. To defend, to protect Hajime-kun, I wanted to do that. But even if I said that, it's not like I can do anything. Since it's me who I couldn't even protect a promise. Yue is a really powerful enemy.
Kaori's joking laughter made Hajime narrowed his eyes again. Kaori's smile was not the usual warm, positive smile, because it might have also included self-torment and self-ridicule. You've been apologizing since we came here, and don't make such a smile. Hajime's sudden words made Kaori raised question_mark above her head. However, her smile immediately collapsed and her expression stiffened from Hajime's next words. Listen, Kaori, why did you follow us here?
Am I just a burden after all?
The downcast Kaori made Hajime sigh, and he didn't answer her question. I remember the talk we had under the moonlight while drinking that disgusting tea that day. That's why, honestly, I don't think it's weird that you have goodwill for the current me.
Hajime-kun,
However, I have no intention of denying it. I am sure Kaori had things only you can see, and that's what stirred your heart. Thus, there's no meaning for me to deny the decision you made. I have given you my answer. Even so, I think it's a good thing that you favor me. Even Shia didn't even feel discouraged. Rather, she recently made me seriously worry if she was going to attack me in my sleep. Hajime recently felt the dread as he thought of the rabbit-eared girl with bugged physical strength. Seeing such a Hajime, Kaori made a wry smile in agreement.
I think her aggressiveness and positiveness amazing.
I treated her harshly at the beginning. I didn't think of anyone as special other than you. I honestly thought she was going to give up quickly. No matter how harsh I treated her, how I treated you as special, and she was always neither angry nor did she cry, but she seemed happy about it. She couldn't compare to you in magic usage because she didn't have aptitude in magic, and even if she was defeated in a mock battle against you, she didn't stop to move forward. She didn't cower even though she was attacked by her own inferiority complex.
Thing like inferiority complex.
Kaori, who silently listening to Hajime, couldn't help to object and stood up. However, she was exhausted and immediately sat back. Didn't you notice it? You've been apologizing since we came here. Even the way you smiled is completely different than the usual. Listen, Kaori, don't keep looking down. Raise your face and look into my eyes. That being said, Kaori finally noticed she had been looking down for a while now. Before, she made sure to look at the other person's eyes when talking. Thus, when Kaori met Hajime's gaze, she realized. Listen here, I will not say it for the second time. I love Yue. Even if I thought of others as important, it won't change that only Yue is special. So if you feel pain from it, if you feel you are inferior compared to Yue, Kaori, you should part from me. The blunt words made Kaori look down again. Hajime continued talking even though he did see her reaction. The reason I allowed Kaori to accompany us at that time is because of the same reason as Shaya. I judged it'd be the best for Kaori to be by my side, because I trust Kaori. You understood my feelings. Even so, you moved ahead for your wish. That's why I thought it'd be okay for you by my side if you favor me. But I don't feel the same way now. When Hajime ended his words, he separated his hand from the downcast Kaori's. Then he spun the ending words. Please think carefully about it once more. Why did you come along with us? And if should you stay by my side from now on, Kaori is not Shaya. Shia likes Yue too. Depending on your answer, I will send you back to your best friend, Yegashi. Kaori wanted to say something as she watched the hand separating from her own. The words wouldn't come out. Inside the awkward atmosphere, Hajime urged Kaori to move because it was necessary for them to approach the biggest sailing ships enshrined at the distance. Hajime and Kaori looked up at the sailing ships. Even on Earth, early sailing ships couldn't match the gigantic scale of this one. No less than 300 meters in length, and as large as a 10-story building, it was only being partly visible from the ground. All along their hull, magnificent decorations were mounted. Although rotted, they still gave off a strong impression that made you want to admire them. On their wooden ship, Hajime, who also specialized in manufacturing the same decorations, was grudgingly impressed with the extent they had detailed their ships and couldn't help but admire the time and effort the artisans put into creating them. While hugging Kaori, Hajime jumped up using Void Grip and landed on the terrace at the top of the luxury liner. Then, sure enough, the surrounding space began to distort. Again? Kaori, stay alert. Something is bound to happen.
It looks fine to me.
Hajime felt that Kaori's laid-back response wasn't suitable for someone still in the middle of challenging a great dungeon. It had become clear for a while now that Kaori's tension had dropped sharply. Even though she was still putting on a smile, Hajime could tell that it was different from all her usual ones. He was sure she wasn't doing it on purpose, but her new distracted attitude wasn't good for their current situation. She should at least hold it in check until the exploration of Meljin deep-sea ruins was done, Hajime thought, while sharply scratching his cheek. Hajime took a quick survey of their altered environment. This time it seems they were on top of a luxury liner sailing out at sea. Presently it's nighttime, with the full moon shining in the heavens. The luxury liner is shining with light sparkles, and on the deck there are various arrangements, buffet-type style cuisines, lined up with many people who were chatting about while having delicious-looking food in one hand.
This is a party, isn't it?
Ha! It sure is dazzling. Did we misunderstand Meljin's concept? Hajime and Kaori were standing upon a raised terrace, probably an area reserved for the crew, while looking down on the enormous deck and trying to get their heads around the difference between this cheerful party and the ghastly sight they had witnessed last time. Then, just as they decided to take a brief rest, the door behind them opened, and several chatting sailors walked out. Rather than risk losing this chance while they took a rest, they decided to mix in with the sailors and listen to their conversation. From listening to the sailors' stories, they learned that this maritime party was apparently being held in celebration of the end of the war that had continued for so many years rather than ending through invasion and annihilation, had been resolved by signing a peace treaty. The sailors seemed happy, and if they looked closely, they were able to see that not only were there humans on the deck, but also devils and demi-humans. Without distinction for race, everyone was freely chatting among themselves.
There was an age such as this, wasn't there?
It certainly was a great achievement for all those people to give so much effort to end the war. Although I'm not sure how many years have passed since the end of the war. Surely not all of the ill feelings have faded. Yet they are still able to laugh so freely.
Surely the people down there must be similar to those who tried their best to end the war. Everyone is different. Seeing this doesn't necessarily mean that everyone is able to laugh together so soon.
That's true. Getting caught up in the atmosphere and bright expressions of the people, Hajime and Kaori also naturally loosened up. After a while, they saw an elderly man climbing up onto a stage prepared on the deck. There was a sense of respect in the eyes of the people below as they noticed him on stage and abruptly stopped chatting to focus on him. There was another man who appeared to be an aide standing near the elderly man, but for some reason he was wearing a hood and trying to blend in with the background. Given the occasion, Hajime thought that his appearance was a bit rude. However, it didn't look like anyone else was concerned about the hooded man. Eventually, when all the chatter had subsided, the elderly man began his speech.
Gentlemen, those who wished for peace, the brave souls who ran through the war risking their lives are the messengers of peace. Today at this place I truly feel that it's a great fortune for all of us to be able to meet here together. It was a war that begun a long time, even for my generation, yet we were able to stand together in peace after bringing an end to the war. To see such a dream come true, my heart still trembles.
Everyone was listening in silence as the old man spoke. As the speech continued, events such as doubt, crossing paths, and incidents became stepping stones towards peace. He spoke of those who were often reckless in their attempts to overturn this, and the friends who scattered during the middle. As the speech progressed, everyone's eyes begun to look far away, yearning for their missed ones and suppressing moisture from the corners of their eyes, enduring the urge to let their tears flow. It would seem the old man is the king of the humans. Among the humans, even at the early stages of the war, it seemed as there was a movement behind the scenes for peace. The people now nod to show their respect. Finally, it seemed as though the speech ended. The king still seems quite worked up after his speech. The atmosphere on the deck is also still quite worked up. However, Hajime is attacked by a bad premonition. Something feels off. He has seen the expression the king is wearing somewhere before.
And thus 1 year has passed since the signing of the peace treaty. It was all so foolish.
At the words of the king, for a moment the crowd appeared puzzled. Hajime thought he had misheard him. Everyone was looking at each other in confusion. In the meantime, the king's heated speech continued.
Yes, it truly was foolish to see both the beasts and the heretics talking about the future and exchanging drinks. It was ridiculous. Do you understand, gentlemen?
What on earth are you saying, Alice? Hell, what's wrong with saying gah?
With the sudden change of King Alist, one of the devils who was agitated stood up before him. Then, as he tried to question King Alist, the sudden result was a sword growing from his chest. The demon tribeman who was stabbed looked back over his shoulder to see the startled expressions of the human tribe. By looking at their faces, you could tell they were all honestly surprised. With a final expression of disbelief, the man of the demon tribe collapsed. Screams arose, and the entire deck fell into an uproar. "Your Majesty!" cried several men and women as they rushed to the collapsed body of the demon tribeman.
Well, gentlemen, as I stated originally, I am truly happy to bring everyone together tonight. We will create a country free from the races that were abandoned by God, where all can be equal. From the Genesis, there was only one God, Ehito-sama. Those who turned their backs on him, foolishly worshipping a false god, such pagans mustn't be allowed to leave. It will end today. The only path to peace is through destroying all the heathens. Therefore, this day, as we sweep away the leaders of the non-believers, I cannot help but rejoice. Now, servants of God, pass judgment on these heathens with the hammer of justice. Ehito-sama, please watch over our work.
King Alist's laughter echoed loudly as he fell onto his knees and gazed up towards the heavens. At the same time, he signaled soldiers, who had been dressed as sailors, to completely surround the party on the deck. The deck is positioned in the middle of the ship, sandwiched between a gigantic mast and the main structure, 10 floors high, running from front to back. If you look, the soldiers are occupying the scaffolding on the terrace and mast, arranged so that they can focus on the targets below them. Out at sea, there is nowhere they can escape to. The geographical advantage is entirely on the soldier side. Hajime would have been aware of this already, but the country's leaders' expressions of despair showed they were only just realizing it now. In an instant, all the magic was finally released and bombarded the deck. Although the passengers fought back desperately, they were at a disadvantage. It was a one-sided massacre, as those who resisted were slaughtered. Those who ran fled towards the inside of the ship. However, most of them were killed as they ran. The deck had been completely changed into a sea of blood in only an instant.
Ah!
Kaori covered her mouth with one of her hands to suppress the nausea as she leant on the railing. The sight was so horrific that it was no wonder Hajime reached out and offered Kaori his support. It appears King Alist felt like hunting, as he soon joined his subordinates in pursuing the remnants who had fled into the ship. The hooded man followed the king into the ship. Just before he stepped inside, he turned and looked back at the deck. In that instant, a tuft of silver hair escaped from the fringe of his hood and shone brightly in the reflected moonlight. His hidden eyes met theirs, and for a moment Hajime's thought they had been seen. The surroundings distorted apparently, the dungeon only one to show them that previous scene. Hajime and Kaori were soon back to on top of the derelict luxury liner. Kaori, rest for a little bit.
No, I'm fine. Although it was somewhat intense, but I wonder if that was really the end of that trial. We didn't even do anything.
I think this ship graveyard is its ending point. Although we could have explored the sea beyond the barrier, if you think about it normally, people who wanted to proceed out into the depths of the sea would need to use the ship. Perhaps witnessing that scene was itself the purpose of the vision, to burn the gruesomeness of the god's work into your memory so you would feel compelled to explore this ship as a result. It's a pretty nasty idea, especially for the people from this world. The people of this world, though few of them would make it here, are expected to have faith in the gods. To show them such a gruesome result of their faith, it would surely torture a gentle spirit. And this labyrinth's vital point for exploration is the power of magic, which heavily relies on one's mental state. In that sense, it was the reverse of Race in Great Labyrinth. It was only because Hajime came from another world that the results of this mental pressure was of such a small degree. Hajime and Kaori both looked over the deck with an expression indicating their reluctant remembrance of the ghastly massacre that had occurred here. However, in Hajime's case, his face looked more like he was remembering a bad sports foul. Having made their resolve, the two of them jumped down onto the deck and set foot near the door that King Alist once entered, who knows how long ago. The inside of the ship was completely enclosed in darkness. Since the outside was bright, it wouldn't have been strange for light to shine in through crevices in the rotted wood, but for some reason, there was no light at all. In order to push forward into the darkness, Hajime took a light out from his treasure box.
That sight earlier, even though the war was already over, I wonder, did King really betray them?
That's what it looked like, however. Wasn't it a little bit strange? When he stood up on stage, those people looked at him with eyes full of love and respect. If deep down you truly hated demons and demi-humans, would you really be able to earn such deep respect?
That's true. Based on the way those people were speaking to him, it seems like there must have been a sudden change sometime during the 1 year after the end of the war. What could have happened to cause such a change of heart?
Well, without a doubt, they were fighting for their god. They were shouting it loudly enough. They gave off an almost deranged feeling.
Yeah, they look like Ishtar-san, abusing their religion to look down on others. It's pathetic, isn't it?
Apparently, from the high school girl's perspective, the Pope of the Sacred Church was a pathetic person. However, Hajime only had the smallest feeling of sympathy for him upon hearing it. The two of them continued forwards, still thinking about the earlier scene, until they spotted something ahead shining in response to Hajime's light. Hajime and Kaori stopped their feet and watched as the light slowly approached them. When it got closer, they could see that it was a girl in a fluttering white dress. She stopped in the hallway in front of them and stood there, swaying slightly with her head looking downwards. Kaori and Hajime felt something unpleasant and shuddered violently. Kaori's expression became particularly stiff, while Hajime, deciding that an ordinary girl wouldn't be in a place like this, pointed Donner at the girl with the intention of killing her. Instantly, the girl collapsed into the hallway with a soft thump. Then, at an angle impossible for a normal human's joints, raised herself up onto her hands and feet like a spider and launched herself straight at them. Her bizarre laughter echoed throughout the hallway. Shining eyes, just like those from urban legends, glared at them from between her bangs as Hajime shot at the approaching figure.
No!
Wah! Calm down, Kaori! Don't grab my arm! Just like the template for this situation called for, Kaori clung on to Hajime and let out a scream. The girl approaching them laughed at her mockingly. Hajime, who was trying to shoot the girl with Donner, had his aim shifted due to Kaori clinging on to him. In a moment, the girl was at Hajime's feet. Then, with her bizarre cry, she leapt straight at Hajime's face. Hajime reluctantly gave up on trying to shoot her, and instead delivered a sure-kill Yakuza-style kick straight into her still-laughing stomach. As a precaution, he had clad himself in magic and used grand legs to deliver the blow. The moment Hajime's kick hit her stomach, the girl was blown away into the wall, before bouncing several times and coming to a stop at the end of the hallway. Her limbs were now in an even more unnatural position. She slowly vanished, as though melting into the darkness. Hajime let out a sigh and then gave the still-shaking Kaori, clinging onto him, a bonk on the head with his fist. With a start, Kaori looked up at Hajime, an expression of fear still on her face. Tears clung to her eyes as her mouth let out a small squeak. Anyone could see she was still terrified. "Hey, Kaori, are you bad with these ghoulish type of things?"
Is there such a person who is good with them?
Wouldn't you be fine if you just thought of them as apparitions?
Gushu, I'll try my best.
As Kaori promised, she separated herself from Hajime. However, she didn't let her hand go of Hajime's clothes. Until earlier, she had been worried about what to say to Hajime. She had seemed more reserved than usual, but now a strong will dwelt in her eyes. She would absolutely not allow herself to be separated from him. It was a type of desperation while simultaneously being an expression of her love for him. Just as Kaori had finished gathering her resolve, the door ahead of them in the hallway flew open with a bang. On the other side of the door, there were countless bloodstains on the floor, and when they looked up, they saw the head of a woman with long, dripping wet hair hung up on the ceiling, looking down at them. At the same time, they heard a noise and turned around to see a headless man dragging an axe along the floor behind him. Hajime delivered another one of his Yakuza-like kick to the headless man and readied his gun to follow up, but there was no need. The headless man was already dead from the kick.
No more. I want to go back now. I want to see Shizuku-chan.
As they proceeded further into the ship, the strange phenomena became more and more violent, which caused Kaori to regress back into a child, clinging onto Hajime's back and refusing to come out. Ever since Kaori was small, she had looked up to Shizuku as her knight and protector whenever she entered haunted houses or had to deal with Kuki and the boys. However, those feelings never crossed the boundary into being Yuri. Mel Jean, the founder of Mel Jean Deep Sea Ruins, seemed to be trying to back them into an emotional corner. Hajime, having survived the abyss, already had experience dealing with being surrounded by darkness and didn't really find it very difficult to cope with, though he could understand how it would be difficult for someone with a more normal psyche to handle. However, he couldn't imagine Tio or Yue sobbing from such surprises. That was until a while ago when Kaori, while still half crying, half flirting, had stepped out and begun to repel the horrors using her healing magic. Seeing her sudden change in attitude had made Hajime want to Tsukomi. Where did the scared and lost little girl-like atmosphere from earlier go? As he watched her. As they advanced, Kaori began to get more unsteady again, but together they eventually arrived at the ship's hold. They stepped through the opened heavy doors. They proceeded towards the back of the ship's hold, moving in between the sparsely spread out cargo. However, before they had progressed far, the doors behind them shut themselves with a loud boom! Boom!
Pai?
Kaori let out a strange voice at this surprising sound, and Hajime began to worry whether or not she was keeping in mind their important talk about what she should do after finishing the labyrinth. It wasn't the first time this thought had crossed his mind. However, Hajime just let out a sigh and began to calmly stroking Kaori's shoulders. However, the effectiveness of this tactic was disrupted when a thick fog began to slowly block their field of view.
Ha 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 ha, Hajime-kun.
You're beginning to laugh just like a cheerful foreigner. Don't worry, just handle it like always. You'll be fine if you just crush them with your magic. The moment Hajime replied, they heard the ring of something as it tore through the wind, flying towards them. Hajime moved like a bolt of lightning and blocked the attack aimed at his neck with his left arm. When he lowered his left arm, they could see an extremely thin thread stuck into it. They didn't have time to stare. Soon there was the continuous ring of the wind being cut as arrows flew at them from all sides. To come so far just for a trap? It's so disgusting. That's just typical of those damn liberators.
Come forth, Guardian of Light, absolute light.
Hajime was caught by surprise for a moment, however. Since they were only a primitive weapons, Kaori was able to block them with her defensive magic. Soon, though, the fog ahead of them began to swirl violently, and a fierce storm struck Hajime and Kaori.
Kia!
Kaori was blown away in the storm, her screaming figure disappearing into the fog. Hajime made a sour face as he tried to find her, using his perception ability. Unfortunately, it seems the fog had a function that inhabited skills of the sensing system, similar to inside the Haltina Sea of Trees. Thus, he quickly lost track of her. Che, Kaori, don't move! With a sour face, Hajime called out to Kaori, but instead of Kaori, a knight wielding a longsword came tearing out of the fog ahead of him. Using an unusual technique, he lunged fiercely and swung the sword at Hajime. Parrying the attack calmly with honor, he struck his large opponent in the chest with Schlag, then fired a magic bullet into his stomach with honor. A hole opened in the knight's stomach and he silently vanished into the mist. However, immediately after, a line of swordsmen and knights with abnormal strength emerged from the fog. These warriors held a variety of different weapons and used the fog to launch attacks at Hajime one after another, fading back into the mist after each strike. Damn, so troublesome. While spitting out curses, Hajime expanded red magic bullets around his body like a satellite, also activating light speed, swiftly tidied up his surroundings. It was a concern to him that he could not hear Kaori's voice. Shifting to Kaori, with Hajime gone from her sight, she was finding it hard to keep up a brave front. Kaori was really bad with horror. It would be very difficult to overcome her current predicament, even under normal circumstances. But now her body wanted to freeze up, just from the fear of being alone. Add in her strong inferiority complex, though she wouldn't admit it to herself, and the bottom line was that all she wanted to do was curl herself up and cry. Kaori scolded herself. She mustn't let herself be found cowering like this, and forced her body to stand back up. As soon as she was upright again, she felt a hand on her shoulder. Hajime would often encourage her by patting her on the shoulder. Overcome by happiness, Kaori found herself turning around in delight.
Hajime-ku.
However, as she turned around, Kaori noticed that something felt off about the hand on her shoulder. To be more accurate, it felt too thin and too cold. Kaori felt chills run down her spine as her intuition warned her that what was behind her was not Hajime. If it wasn't Hajime, then who on earth was it? Continuing to turn, now like a rusty machine, Kaori saw it. Eyes, nose, mouth, and then even more holes. It was the face of a woman dyed in a darkness as black as the abyss.
Phew!
Kaori's spirit was over in an instant, and her defensive instincts rendered her unconscious. In the 2 minutes it took Kaori to get up and faint, Hajime had already destroyed 50 ghostly warriors. This was only his rough estimate based on killing one of the ghostly veterans every 2-3 seconds. Just as he was beginning to think he had wiped them all out, a large man wielding a greatsword tore out from the fog, charged straight at him, and swung a blow that boasted of enormous hidden strength. Hajime dodged the attack with the smallest movement of his body. However, it wasn't over yet. The warrior bounced the greatsword back into the air, using the recoil from the blow to the ground and moved to attack again. Hajime responded by activating Vajra, stopping the blow with his mechanical arm and jumping up onto the greatsword with his knees, forcing it from his opponent's hands and trapping it against the ground. Then, with a swift motion, he raised his gun and fired a magic bullet straight into the large man's head. At the same time, the large man's head was blown off. The surrounding fog begins to fade away. Kaori, where are you? Hajime focused all of his senses on finding Kaori's presence. However, even without doing that, Kaori was easily found.
I'm over here, Hajime-kun.
Kaori, are you all right? Hajime divulged a sigh of relief upon seeing Kaori walking towards him with a smile. Once Kaori reached his side, she snuggled up against him with a beautiful smile.
It was very scary.
Is that so?
That's why I want to be comforted.
As she said this, Kaori threw her arms around Hajime's neck and hugged him. At a distance, so close they were practically nose to nose, Kaori locates Hajime's mouth with her eyes and began to draw herself closer. With a gotsutsu sound, Donner's muzzle met Kaori's temple.
Wait, what?
Kaori appeared to be confused as Hajime narrowed his brutal-looking eyes and directed murderous intent towards her. What? Of course I'll kill enemies, no matter how they look like. And without a beat of hesitation, he pulled the trigger. There was the sound of a knife hitting the ground. It had fallen out of the hand of Kaori when she was shot. She had intended to stab him in the back as she was hugging him. With steady footsteps, Hajime approached the collapsed Kaori. Getting back up, Kaori begins talking to Hajime in a frightened and trembling voice.
Hajime-kun, why would you do such a thing?
However, Hajime's response was to fire another magic bullet at Kaori. Don't you dare speak with Kaori's voice. Do not degrade her body by moving it. Did you think I couldn't see the truth? You are nothing but a piece of trash possessing her body. Hajime's magic stone eye had already revealed to him that there was a ghostly woman possessing Kaori. With the truth clearly exposed, Kaori, who until just a moment ago had been cowering on the ground, instantly changed her expression and burst into mocking laughter.
Nah. Even if you know the truth, it is of no matter. You can't do anything. This girl's body is already mine.
As she said this, the possessed Kaori raised herself off the ground and pushed Hajime down onto the ground into the mounted position.
Wait, what are you doing? This is your woman. Do you plan to hurt her?
Shut up! You're giving me a headache. Didn't I tell you not to move? I'm not gonna hurt Kaori. The magic bullets will pass right through her body. The only one who will suffer is you.
If I disappear, this woman's soul will shatter. Is that really all right with you?
At those words, Hajime inclined his head slightly in thought. Although there was a good chance it wasn't a bluff, there was no way to verify if it was true. Most people would probably become trapped by indecision in this situation. Was the possessed Kaori hoping for this? She was giving her cat-like laugh again while motioning for him to step aside. Seeing this, Hajime gave her his reply. It was a pair of magic bullets. The possessed Kaori's expression was too shocked to reveal as to whether she had felt any pain. Soon, her expression shifted into one of frustration as she shouted at Hajime in an angry voice.
Are you insane? Do you not care what happens to this woman?
Shut up, you pile of trash. If I don't attack, then Kaori's body would remain possessed. However, as long as you aren't killed, her soul won't break, right? Until you feel like leaving her body, everything will be fine if I just torment you without killing you. The ghostly woman was left speechless at his words. When she looked into Hajime's eyes, she was being stabbed by his murderous intent that dwelt there. I'll make you regret thinking you could touch what's important to me. Even though you're an enemy, I won't kill you. I won't let you experience the relief of death. I'll make it so you can't escape Kaori's body even if you want to. I'll force you to suffer until you go mad from the pain. Red magic flowed out from Hajime's body. His white hair was caught in the eddies and slowly began to sway in the energy. There was no rage, bloodthirst, or insanity in his eyes. They were like frozen chips of ice. Hajime was furious, more so than ever before. He wouldn't be satisfied with just kill his enemy this time. They must experience cruelty akin to the depths of hell. The ghost possessing Kaori had been too dense to realize she had picked a fight with something that should never be disturbed. Only now, as she felt her gaze trapped in Hajime's eyes, did she finally realize what she had awakened, a monster, one you would normally pray to, never meet. With Donner's muzzle again pressed against her forehead, the ghostly woman earnestly begged for release. Even if all it bought her was permission to disappear a single second faster, when she imagined what this monster would probably do to her, even 1 second seemed like a blessing. She was just an ordinary ghost. Although it did seem that her lingering essence was greater than any of the other apparitions they had encountered. In the face of this atmosphere, it all amounted to nothing. The frozen wrath Hajime was giving off was just that terrifying.
I want to disappear. 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 I want to disappear.
The ghost's sobs echoed louder as Hajime's finger moved to pull the trigger, when suddenly the Kaori's body began to shine. It was the sparkle of the Restore All Abnormal Status Recovery magic, 10,000 Heavens, which Kaori had prepared as a precaution ahead of time using the ability of delayed invocation. While left dumbfounded by the feeling of unbelievable relief, the ghost heard a voice from inside her.
Dash, it's okay. I'll send you off properly.
Alongside these words, the shining, pure white light intensified. The ghost felt afraid as the light wrapped around her, dragging her gently along with it towards the heavens. However, as she gradually passed on to the next world and her consciousness began to fade, she was overcome with a feeling of peace and relief. With one clap, Kaori sent her off and slowly began to open her trembling eyelids. Hajime, still lying underneath Kaori in the mounted position, looked directly up into Kaori's eyes. Ever since Kaori began to shine, the fading presence of the ghost's existence had been reflected in Hajime's magic stone eye. For the moment he released his killing intent and focused on confirming whether the ghost had truly left Kaori. Their faces were so close, and with Hajime's lying underneath her, his gaze filled with a mixture of relief and worry as he focused his eyes intently on her pupils, it would have been enough to make anyone feel moved. Gently lowering her head, Kaori pressed her lips on Hajime's. It was only the barest meeting of their lips, but for Kaori, it was still her precious first kiss. Hajime's whole body went stiffened in surprise for a moment. In order to be certain that Kaori had been released, Hajime had used almost all his concentration to examine her. With his mind so distracted, naturally it wasn't possible for him to avoid a kiss. After a while, Kaori gently released his lips. "What are you?"
Perhaps it's my answer?
"Your answer?"
Why did I follow you? Why do I want to keep on following you? This is my answer to Hajime's questions.
When she said this, Kaori smiled at Hajime. It was a smile he had always seen her wearing, warm like a ray of light from the sun. Ever since coming here, it had become clouded and covered up by a false laugh, but now it shone once again. In fact, Kaori had still retained her consciousness while possessed, though it felt like watching the world outside while trapped inside a glass room. She had still been able to see Hajime in never-seen-before state of fury, saying things like Kaori was important to him. It had flowed right through the ghost and reached her heart. At the sight of this, Hajime, unbearable sadness had risen up in her chest, but at the same time she felt the nervous passion she had when she first confessed to him. If she wanted to explain it, it was a feeling of selfish, of always wanting to be indulged, always make them vividly aware of your presence. Mixed in amongst the circle of girls allowed to surround Hajime, Kaori found it intolerable that she wasn't allowed to hoard him all to herself, yet at the same time she didn't even want to imagine a future where she wasn't by Hajime's side. She wanted to make them recognize that even if her capabilities were nowhere near Yue and the others, her feelings weren't any less.
I like you, Hajime-kun. No, I love you. That's why from here on, I want our futures to be entwined.
Won't it only leave you feeling bitter? Just like it is with Shia. Even if Yue weren't there, it doesn't necessarily mean that I will love you back.
That's true. It'll probably be painful at times. I want to be monopolized. I want you to only look at me. I feel so jealous of Yue sometimes and so inferior when I compare myself to her.
If that's the case.
But I'll only regret it if I allow myself to be separated from you here. I'm sure of it. For me, just being near Hajime is wonderful, and that's how I've always felt. In time, I want to close the gap between us even more, but for right now, this is enough.
Pinching Hajime's cheeks between both her hands, Kaori smiled softly. The expression on Hajime's face was a complex mix of troubled and amazed, but Kaori had decided on her own, and if she believes that it's the best decision for herself, Hajime wouldn't say another word. Each person had their own idea of happiness. Deciding Kaori's happiness for her is something he couldn't do, nor did he want to. I see. If Kaori is fine with this, then I won't say any more.
Although I'll probably cause a lot of trouble. Please don't hate me, all right?
What are you saying at such a late hour? From our time at school up to our time here, you have always been a terrible troublemaker.
That's not true.
Really? Back at school, you never read the situation and would casually come over and talk to me, completely unaware of the word bombs you were dropping everywhere, and never noticing that every time the guys around us would seethe with anger. And then let's not forget, when a negligee-clad lady decided to visit a man's room in the middle of the night.
Oh, I remember. All I wanted to do was talk to you, One. It was really embarrassing when I realized later that I had come to your room dressed like that.
While Kaori was covering her blushing face with her hands, Hajime got up and offered Kaori a hand up, then, with a grin, patted Kaori on the shoulder gently and turned to start walking towards the magic circle that had begun to shine further inside the storeroom once the fog had lifted. However, he was stopped by Kaori tightly grabbing onto his sleeve. If he looked carefully, he could see that she was still a little unsteady. Apparently, the possession had dulled her body's senses a little. Now that the body had been released, it hopefully wouldn't take long for it to return back to its normal state. Let's rest for a little bit. Hajime had suggested this, but it seems Kaori had an idea of her own, and with a smile, she hopped up onto Hajime's back. What are you doing?
Isn't it better if we progress quickly? I don't know when my magic power will return, and if we hang around here, the fog will surely come back, right?
There was definitely some truth to her words, so Hajime replied with a, "It can't be helped," while scratching his head, and walked towards the magic circle while carrying Kaori. Kaori wrapped her arms around Hajime's neck and clung on tightly to his back. Although he didn't say anything, Hajime was trying his best to ignore the soft feeling that pressing up against his back. Kaori moved close enough that he could feel her hot breath in his ear. Her lips, close enough that they were almost touching his earlobe, opened gently, and a sweet sound reverberated inside his ears.
Hajime-kun, I want to asking you something about what happened earlier.
Earlier?
Yes. Why was it that you got so angry during that fight?
Saya, why was I angry? I don't know.
Mo, please tell me.
Refusing to answer her questions or get caught up in her flirtatious atmosphere, Hajime continued to carry Kaori while moving forward at a brisk pace and, without hesitation, stepped into the magic circle. Faint light shone on the surface of the sea, and it made the swaying waves a ceiling. In that space, a building that was like a temple existed in the center, which was supported by 4 huge columns. There was no wall between the columns. A delicate, complex magic formation was drawn at the place that seemed to be an altar at the center of the temple. Still, from the temple whose surroundings were filled with ocean water, the pathway that floated on the surface of the sea extended in 4 directions, and the end went on to become a circle. And a magic formation was also drawn on the footing of that circle. One among the 4 magic formations began to shine suddenly. Then, after the momentary light that was like an explosion, the shadows of people stood there. It was Hajime and Kaori. Here is that a magic formation? Unexpectedly, was it captured?
Is there some problem?
No, I didn't think that it was really already cleared, though I felt it was a little easy when compared to the other labyrinths, though I expected that Cleone to at least come out at the end. Apparently, understanding that they seemed to have arrived at the dwelling of Meru Marujan, Hajime made an expression like he was a little let down. In contrast to that, Kaori, peeking at his face from over Hajime's shoulder, replied while smiling wryly.
You know, Hajime-kun, this place was plenty difficult. The beginning is an undersea cave after all, and because normally you would not possess something like a submarine, you would continuously be consuming a lot of magical power the whole time until it was cleared, and if done poorly, as it is, you would drown. The Cliomike thing was an almost impossibly tough enemy, and because physical attacks were ineffective against the things that looked like ghosts, you will again rely on magical power. Because of that, breaking through cannot be done without fighting a large army. It's a sufficiently ridiculous degree of difficulty.
Yeah, though. I guess it might be so if you say so.
Not to mention, as for the people of this world, the piety seems to be strong to display such madness.
Too much mental intensity? Kaori's point was, in short, that Hajime was too strong. When saying up to there, certainly, Hajime agreed that Guryuin Conflagration Mountain would have also been able to be captured flawlessly if not for the attack of Freed at the end. And, come to think of it, they had arrived before joining up with Yue and the others. But at the time that he thought about what they were doing, the magic formation that was at the end of the path to the right began to shine like it had read Hajime's thoughts. When the bursting light had settled down, the figures of the three people of Yu, Shia, and Tio were there. It was exquisite timing. Good timing. Was it okay over there?
N, over there, was it not safe?
Ah, Kaori-san, are you all right?
Mu, are you hurt? What happened to recovery magic?
To Hajime's calling out, even though each of them showed an energetic appearance, they sent gazes like they were worried at Kaori, who was being carried on Hajime's back. Kaori's reply regarding that was,
Thank you for worrying, but I'm fine, because half was just me being spoiled.
to Kaori, who declared that boldly as she floated a truly cheerful smile as Yue narrowed her eyes. Shia appealed with, I'm jealous, please switch places with me, and Tio raised a broad smile with a hoo-hoo, seemingly amused. Hey, Kaori, perhaps, can you already stand up?
Actually, from the beginning, there was no problem with walking. I'm sorry?
Ha, hurry up and get down. To Kaori, who laughed like a little evil slipped out, Hajime let Kaori down while showing an amazed expression, and then they joined with Yue and the others and faced the temple.
And? What happened? Hey, try to say it, Gushujin-sama. It seems something happened with Kaori. Hey, what happened? Say it without hiding, Hebu?
Because she began to question him with an absolutely annoying feeling, while Tio smirked, Hajime, who became irritated, dispatched an open-handed slap at once. As she sat at ease, Tio, who had crumbled down with a fascinating slanting posture, colored her cheeks while breathing roughly.
I impact after a long time? Ha ha, hen. Gushujin-sama, isn't it fine punishing me more? Isn't doing a kick instead good?
In the atmosphere that was expected somewhere, ignoring Tio, who said such things as she pleased, Hajime and the others went towards the altar inside. From the back, one more time. It is fine with one time. Please, hit me. Though the disgusting words were heard, everyone ignored it with all of their power.
And? What happened?
Yue asked the same question as Tio. However, the look was not at Hajime. It was faced at Kaori. Kaori, smiling sweetly in good humor as she matched gazes with Yue, dropped a bomb of words like the other day.
I only kissed with Hajime-kun a little.
Eh? Is that true? From which one? From which one was it? It can't be from Hajime-san?
It was from me. Hajime-kun was angry for my sake. I stole it, not being able to endure it.
Wah! It's the same as my time. I also stole one because I could not endure it. We're comrades. Kaori-san.
Fufu. That's right, Shia. Next time, shall we steal one with two people?
In that case, should we rather make it to a fait accompli?
Right at Hajime's side, the two girls began to refine the Hajime attack plan. A cold sweat flowed on Hajime's face, though it looked like they were in high spirits going kya kya as they appeared to be joking. In fact, it was because the eyes of Kaori and Shia were serious. In the old days, he never would have imagined Kaori turning carnivorous eyes towards him.
I thought you would run away with your tail rolled up.
Yue turned a probing look at Kaori. Yue had noticed that Kaori was tormenting her heart as she felt an inferiority complex. Therefore, this time that became the first great labyrinth challenge for Kaori. Possibly she thought about if she would run home failing. Of course, she had no intention to comfort the other party, who had proclaimed a declaration of war to her. If she drew back here, it was just fine if she declared victory when she considered the extent of it. However, it seemed that Kaori had gotten back on her feet, or rather, there was even an atmosphere of determination being made since before. She was anxious about what had happened.
That's right, from Hajime-kun as well. I was told that doing so sooner was better, but the various differences among other things with Yue, I will show them now.
Did you become defiant?
Indeed, it might be called that. Or perhaps I should say, although I came along with you all becoming defiant from the start, showing the difference, it was surely only forgotten. I showed you a shameful place.
Although it would be fine if you gave up as you were.
Fufu, are you scared? To compete together?
Don't get carried away by the rhythm. Troublemaker.
That, it was said also by Hajime-kun. Do I have a constitution to make trouble like that, I wonder?
To Yue's sharp words, Kaori's face stiffened. Though she felt a little down being called a troublemaker similarly by both her rival in love and the one she loved, she immediately pulled herself together. Incidentally, actually Yue as well, or perhaps you should say Hajime and the others, because everyone comparatively has a constitution to make trouble, though the word surely boomeranged considerably. The self-consciousness of it was not in Yue.
Well, although it might be as Yue says, because I am at least Hajime-kun's importance, I decided to aim at special, doing my best, whatever anyone might say, right?
I see. In that case, I will accept your challenge the same as before.
Yes. Even so, I don't hate Yue, you know? A fighting friend or something like that, that sort of thing was yearned for just a little.
Friends, Kaori and I are...
That's right, friends. In Japan, there is something like a person who represents friend writing rival. In that case, isn't it fine to read friend by writing love rival too?
Japan, Hajime's birthplace. It is a more mysterious country the more I hear about it. But I think it is a good sense.
Right. Ufufu, that's why. Please take care of me after this too.
Though Yue and Kaori were emitting an atmosphere of good feelings somewhat, at the side, Hajime, who heard the two people's conversation, was terribly uncomfortable. It was a feeling like a young man alone, even inappropriately slipping into the midst of girls that were making girls talk. And such things as Kaori knowing the words of a certain end-of-the-century person called strong, although it cannot be helped wanting to Tsukomi because Yue's return was the words of a certain cardboard box-loving snake, he controlled himself because he read the mood. Hajime and the others who arrived at the altar set foot on the magic formation with everybody. Going by the usual, it carefully examined the inside of their minds, and their memories were read. However, it was not just at this time. It was like looking at what the other people experienced at the same time. In other words, what Yue and the others experienced was shared with Hajime and Kaori too. Somehow or other, it seemed that Yue and the others finally arrived at an abandoned metropolis that should even be called an undersea city in a huge underground space. Thereupon, the space warped the same as with Hajime and Kaori, and it was like war came in the metropolitan area with the armies of two countries. Because that metropolis seemed that it was a place being invaded by the army of the Majin tribe in the human capital, and in the end it seemed they were attacked from both the same as Hajime and Kaori. There was a huge architecture that appeared to be the royal castle in the interior of the capital, and you and the others who pushed on while kicking about the armies heard the speech of the leaders in the invaded royal castle. By all means, because the incident where the Majin tribe destroyed a human village was the impetus. Although the humans' country that made this metropolis the capital city began a war with the Majin tribe side, actually that was like a conspiracy of the human side that did not hope for peace and desired the Majin tribe's extermination. By the time it was noticed, the war that was already getting out of hand expanded, and finally it had become a situation where the united human side had the tables turned on them and was invaded until the royal capital. It seemed that was the situation. And the person plotted that conspiracy. It seemed it was the high priest of the Light Faith Church that was deeply connected with the country, and this Light Faith Church apparently was the predecessor of the Sacred Faith Church. Furthermore, they appeared to be violently cornered. As though they were entreating a deity in troubled times, they tried to obtain the support of God, offering sacrifices. As a result, several hundred human women and children were gathered from the metropolitan area, and it became a ghastly situation of a mass killing being done in the church's cathedral. Even you and the others, when they saw that scene, it seemed to be quite intense as expected, because the confirmation of memories by the magic formation compelled them to remember. It made their faces pale. Especially, Shia seemed like she would vomit at any time.
Finally, the confirmation of memories ended, and everyone seemed to have been recognized as someone who had captured it safely. The new age of God's magic was etched within Hajime's and the others' minds.
Was this magic year? Wasn't it end to end of the continent? Damn liberators!
Found it. Power of regeneration.
Hajime breathed out abusive language. That was because the Age of God's magic of Marugini undersea ruins that they obtained was reproduction magic. He remembered the wording of the lithography that was under the great tree of Hartsina, Sea of Trees. He was certain that it was written that the power of regeneration was necessary before advancing. In other words, to capture the great labyrinth that was at the end of the east, it would not be obtained if you did not go until the end of the west, and it was absurdly troublesome for a person who had arrived at Hartsina Sea of Trees first, though it was still better since Hajime and the others possessed the means of high-speed movement with the magic-driven vehicles. When Hajime puckered his eyebrows at the repulsiveness of the liberators, and simultaneously with the magic formation's light paling, a parallelepiped came out from the floor and approached. It seemed like a small altar. When thinking that the altar shone faintly, in the next moment the light took the shape of a human form. Somehow or other it seemed to be a message left behind similarly with Oscar Orcus. The human form clearly changed into an outline gradually, and it became a single woman. The girl who sat on the altar was wearing something like a white one-piece dress that became loose, and she possessed fan-shaped ears and long emerald green hair. It seemed that the liberators, one person, Meru Merugini, was a woman who was related to the Sea Tribe. She, the same as Oscar, told the truth of the liberators after she introduced herself. She seemed to be a gentle woman, wearing a kind atmosphere, even while carrying grief. Before long, when she finished the same talk as what Oscar had reported, she spoke words at the end.
Please, do not cling to God. Do not rely on it. Do not get used to things that are given. Struggle for the sake of grabbing hold of and taking it. Decide by your own will, and advance ahead by your own feet. Any difficult problem, the answer is always within you. It is only within you. Do not be misled by the sweet answer that God deludes you with. Under free will, for sure, there is happiness. To you, I am praying that a rain of happiness pours down on you.
Finishing it so, Meru Merugine vanished, becoming faint light again. Immediately afterward, a small magic formation shone as it appeared in the place where she had sat, and when the light settled down, a coin where the crest of Merugine was etched was placed there.
The number of proofs is 4. Hajime-san, with this we are surely able to challenge the Sea of Trees labyrinth too. I wonder how Father and the others are doing.
Shia was quick to think about her family and hometown that she really missed. However, because what came to mind was her father and the others going "Hyaha," she dispersed that scene by shaking her head. As Hajime put away the coin of proof in the treasure warehouse, he recalled the Halia going "Hyaha," the same as Shia, and drove out the scene by shaking his head. And, just as the proof was put away, the temple began rumbling. And then, the ocean water of the surroundings suddenly began to raise the water level. Psst! Forced expulsion, huh? Everyone, hold on.
Wawa, it's too unreasonable.
It's like race in great labyrinths, no Muda.
Water torture is being done.
To the seawater that terrifically increased in force, Hajime and the others, who did not even have time to take out and board the submarine, were submerged in the blink of an eye. Right away, they were again individually no match for the draining, and everyone firmly grabbed on each other's clothes and equipped a compressed oxygen cylinder in their mouths that was taken out from the treasure warehouse. And then, immediately after that, the ceiling part opened like the shortcut of Guryuan Conflagration Mountain, and ocean water poured in with violent force. Hajime and the others also, flowing into the shaft, were blown away to the upper regions by the violent force like being pushed out in a water fountain from below. Perhaps, though it might be the shortcut of Maragine undersea ruins, different from the Meru Maragine, with an atmosphere such as a kind Won-Isan being gentle, it was an absurdly violent shortcut. Furthermore, it was like compulsion. Unexpectedly, she might have been an extreme person. Hajime and the others who were forced up finally noticed that overhead was a dead end. However, the moment they collided with it, the ceiling part slid again, and they were thrown out into the vast sea vigorously outside of the ruins. Hajime was convinced Meru Marujin was absolutely an extremely sketchy character, contrary to her appearance. Hajime and the others who were thrown out in the sea hurriedly took out the submarine from the treasure warehouse, and then, though they tried to board it from the hatch, that plan was obstructed, mostly because of an opponent they did not want to meet. A semi-transparent tentacle passed before their eyes with terrific force, and the submarine was sent flying. Yay!
Frozen coffin.
In the gaze that Hajime turned ahead, although it was a seemingly fairy-like modeling, making everything melt, it was the worst brutal creature that regenerates infinitely, the huge Cleone. While grinding his teeth at the thing that appeared especially after the capture was finished, Hajime called out to Yue by invoking telepathy. The huge Cleone again shot a countless number of tentacles with a violent force, like they were not resisted by the water. On the other hand, Yue froze the surrounding ocean water in a spherical shape by harmonizing in response to Hajime's call and formed a barrier of ice. The barrier of ice was mightily blown away in the sea by the force of the tentacles that hit directly with Hajime and the others inside. Everyone was made to shake within the barrier at the violent
Vertical bar, what should we do? Kushuji-sama!
Everybody aim at the sea. We'll be tortured to death underwater. I'll buy us time. Hajime remotely manipulated the submarine by operating the ring-type induction stone while saying so. From behind them, the submarine that should have been blown away and sunk plunged forward with extreme speed and evaded the countless tentacles that came to attack while wrenching the hull. And then it shot a countless number of torpedoes from the bottom of the ship. The number of torpedoes that could be shot all at once was 12. If one thinks about it normally, it would be plenty of destructive power. However, Hajime, judging that the situation would gradually get worse if he did not make a certain chance here, did not loosen his hand and shot all of the torpedoes consecutively that were loaded on the submarine. Making it navigate like making the hull slip sideways, he made a circle with the huge Cleone in the center. While implementing impossible movement if it was an ordinary ship, the number of torpedoes that were fired successively were 48 in general. Those that rushed while drawing a line of bubbles brought violent destruction, directly hitting the huge Cleone without varying their aim. Such muted impact sounds reverberated, and the ocean water rose and swelled like it had expanded. From the sea, if one were to look above the huge Cleone, the sea level would instantaneously rise, and next they would have observed an enormous column of water spout. Hajime and the others tried to surface by manipulating the water current immediately after all of the torpedoes exploded. However much it looked like a monster that even possessed regenerative power, it should have bought some time for a little while. However, the huge Cleone's nonsensicalness seemed to have easily exceeded their predictions.
You, above.
Isk, no good. I won't make it.
A semi-transparent jelly was drifting above Hajime and the others, who were trying to surface while recovering the remote-controlled submarine, and it became a Cleone of 3 meters size when it gathered and solidified in several blinks. And then, when it opened its large head with a gappa, it swallowed the barrier of ice as it was. Naturally, Hajime and the others were in the Cleone's belly together with the barrier. Shit, the regeneration is too fast.
It looked like it regenerated from a tentacle that was torn off.
This is bad, Hajime-san. The surroundings are full of jelly.
Apparently, it was not just the tentacle that was torn off. The semi-transparent jelly seemed to have been distributed here and there by getting on the ocean current from the beginning.
Hey, Jim. There was not much to maintain it. I can't reinforce it because there is no ocean water in the belly.
Everyone prepare for impact. You frantically resisted the barrier of ice melting with terrific force. Hajime, while strengthening its defensive power by cladding the barrier with Vajra, took out a large quantity of rockets and torpedoes from the treasure warehouse outside of the barrier, namely, in the belly of the Cleone. Once more, the Cleone's body exploded and scattered together with a thunderous roar. Because it began to melt even with Vajra in a short time, even Hajime and the others who bathed in the shock of the nearby explosion were grandly blown away, and the barrier of ice was also smashed. They were thrown out into the sea. Hajime remotely controlled and moved the submarine in the sea as he caught Kaori and Shia, who could not directly fight underwater. However, this time the submarine was caught. One part of the huge Cleone had clung to the ship's bottom before anyone was aware and opened a hole in it. In the gap where the cruising speed dropped, as ocean water flowed into the interior of the ship, the surrounding semi-transparent jelly that had been scattered gathered in one go and wrapped up the submarine. Furthermore, Hajime and the others noticed when they were surfacing that a large amount of semi-transparent jelly was expanding to cover overhead of them. Judging by the huge Cleone's unusual recovery speed, it was not possible to break through in a half-hearted manner. While spewing abusive language in his mind at his prided submarine being melted, I called out to Yua with telepathy. Vertical bar, Yue. Peel rely on you for spatial piercing vertical bar.
It will take 40 seconds.
Hindrances will not be done. To escape from the sea, we have no choice but that.
And leave it to me.
Yue closed her eyes to concentrate and did not move. Kaori and Shia clung to her so that she did not get washed away by the current. The spatial piercing that Yue was attempting to use was one of the space magics that was the Age of Gods magic acquired in Guryuan Conflagration Mountain. Making a hole in a point of two spaces, the space of the two spots were connected. In short, it was magic that made a warp gate. Still, because it hasn't been long since it was learned, being used by Yue, it will take that much time. The tentacles that came attacking, Tio somehow mowed them down with a rapid fire of reduced version breath. However, since the breath's magic power consumption is intense, and since the power and range fall considerably underwater, it was difficult to hit the tentacles because of the straight line attack, and the annihilation power was weak. It will likely break through without being held for even several more seconds. Hajime, taking out ores successively from the treasure warehouse, proceeded to continuously use Rensei, and like the barrier of ice that Yue formed not long ago, formed a physical barrier in the shape of a sphere.
Gushujin-sama, it has already broken through.
Vertical bar, I was able to do it, so everyone get in. The metallic barrier sufficient enough to take in 5 people was completed, and simultaneously with Tio getting into it last, the hole was closed as it became a perfect metal sphere. Furthermore, that metal sphere was covered in red magical power. It was strengthened by Vajra. Tentatively, because gravity stones were also included, it would not keep sinking as well. Immediately after that, the tentacles rushed the metal sphere and began to wrap it up in one go. The semi-transparent jelly that melts even magic power itself immediately destroyed and consumed the Vajra. And then, even the surface of the metal sphere was melted in a moment. However, when thinking that red sparks ran on the metal sphere, metal swelled from the melted edges, and the protective wall was just barely maintained. That was because Hajime continued to constantly use Rensei from within. Fortunately, there was a kind of ore that was contained within the treasure warehouse to a literally rotting degree. Repeated Rensei seriously as he opposed the rate of melting, and then the moment he impatiently waited for finally came.
Spatial piercing.
Use spatial transference magic was invoked. Within the metal sphere, a shining membrane of an elliptical shape was completed in the immediate vicinity of Hajime and the others. It was the gate that connected space. Everybody jump in. In accordance with the command of Hajime, who continued to use Rensei by applying his hand to the metal sphere, everyone jumped into the gate all at once. Hajime also jumped in last. After Hajime passed through it, the gate immediately terminated, and several seconds later, a countless number of tentacles pierced the metal sphere and melted it. Hajime and the others who passed through the gate were attacked by a terrible floating sensation. It was because the movement done before was to the sky. To be separated from the sea even a little, Yue had established the exit 100 meters in the sky. Immediately, Tio used dragonification and floated as she placed Hajime and the others on her back. On Tio's back, Yue started to crumble down, and Kaori and Shia supported her from the sides. It was a state of magical power completely drying up. Hurriedly, she replenished it, taking out magical power from the magic crystal stones. You saved us, as expected of you. Space transference is proportionate in difficulty.
Ha ha. I did my best, but it's still not a level for combat.
As Yua said, the handling of space magic was difficult to the extent that it could not be compared with gravity magic, and in the view of Yua, it was still no top a level where it could be used in actual fighting. Much time is taken to construct the magic formation image by means of imagination composition, and the magical power efficiency is also still bad, as even though they made a spatial transition of 100 meters, it was to an extent that it consumed magical power of 2 times that of superlative magic. Nevertheless, because of Yue being skilled, she was able to attain it and put it to use in a short period, and their escape was able to be done. Admiration was sent freely from Kaori and the others too, and to a certain extent, Yue, who blushed, was embarrassed. Though everyone loosened their faces at the situation, the next moment their expressions became frozen. Together with such a roaring sound, suddenly a huge tsunami swept down on them from the back of Hajime and the others. No, even calling it huge is presumptuous. Already there was a wall in the sky. The tsunami that seemed to easily exceed 500 meters in height came to attack while raising wave crests in the distant sky, where Tio flew about 100 meters high in the sky, and the diameter seemed to be about 1 kilometer. Tio!
Acknowledged.
Tio recovered herself at Hajime's shout and accelerated in one go as she fluttered her wings. There was no escape anyway. Space transition would not be in time. If it was, there was nothing to think about. But to the other side, she flew with a high speed that seemed to rival the time she escaped from Guryuen Conflagration Mountain.
Restraining seal, beyond sage.
Beyond sage.
Kaori produced a rope of light that connected everyone to prepare for when they would be swallowed, while at the same time she expanded high-grade defensive magic together with Yua. Shia gave a warning the next instant as she widened her eyes when concentrating on something.
Tio-san, be careful! That is inside the tsunami. Tentacles are coming!
She seemed to have reported the scene that she saw with her characteristic magic foresight's derivation future assumption. Tio, without even confirming Shia's words, twisted her body instantaneously. Right afterward, countless tentacles extended from the tsunami and pierced the space where Tio was, until now immediately. She was able to avoid them successfully. However, the difference with the tsunami had been shortened because of that reason. The tentacles that still came attacking, though, Hajime intercepted and burned them to ashes with a flamethrower. Damn it! Everyone get together. Hajime, who was on Tio's back, covered Yue, Shia, and Kaori like he was hugging them, and then, right after that, the huge tsunami that should even be called a natural disaster swallowed them. Because there was the beyond sage of the pair of Yue and Kaori, though they did not receive the impact of the tsunami directly, even so they were unreasonably tossed around by the fierce torrent and were sent back into the sea. One piece of the beyond sage was completely smashed, and the other piece was already cracked. Supposing if they had not expanded anything but one piece, then at about this time they might have gone to a watery grave. Hajime and the others, who shook their heads at the shock from being thrown into the sea, raised their faces as they made grim expressions again. How should I put it? The aimed at prey isn't let go. The huge Cleone was already in front of Hajime and the others, who were protected by Beyond Sage. Furthermore, that figure was becoming even larger, and it already exceeded 20 meters. Was it still insufficient? While gathering semi-transparent jelly from the surroundings, it continued to grow even larger.
It can't be. Things like not dying, melting anything, and manipulating even the sea. What should we do?
Hajime-san, can you give me a serious kiss? I want to do it with Hajime-san at least at the end.
Boo, Goshujin-sama. Me too. I desire a kiss at the end.
However, the girls who turned their gazes at Hajime shook their bodies with a biku, because Hajime's eye glittered with flames. The glint in his eye was sharp, carrying murderous intent of an insanely thick degree, and he was glaring at the Cleone that had become huge as he bared his teeth. Hajime would not do something like giving up. There was not even a tiny bit of such a thought. What was in his head was, what should they do to kill the enemy before their eyes, and how could they survive? It was only just that. Confronted with a formidable enemy of an impossible degree, if that was enough to give up, Hajime would not be standing in this place now. He surely would have perished in the abyss a long time ago. And, understanding that, surely because they had escaped the verge of death in the abyss together, Yue also still frantically worked out her thoughts without carrying the likes of resignation at all. At the eyes of Hajime that glittered, Kaori, Shia, and Tio, though they stiffened as they were, and gazed at him with expressions that were engrossed for a little while like their hearts had been stolen. They regained their consciousness because the huge Cleone commenced its attack, finally becoming a 30-meter class. Panicking, Kaori formed Beyond Sage over again. Shia grasped for possibilities of victory with future assumption. Tio fired breath. In the girl's eyes there was no color of giving up anymore. The likes of a brave woman, if that was not a person who should be at Hajime's side, it was because it was thought so. Yue also, although she had not thought of a plan to break the deadlock yet, for now she was going to crush both offense and defense for the sake of surviving. Hajime did not do anything in particular, and just intently worked out his thoughts. In the given time that you and the others earned, he continued to search for a path to victory with high-speed thoughts while invoking light speed. He ordered himself to recall all of the information there was now. With terrific force within Hajime's brain, the scenes until now flashed back. And then I remembered. We had once gotten away from the huge Cleone. That changed into a question. Although so much power exists, why did it overlook us once? At that time, what differed with the present fight? That was, we're not using fire much. Right, last time Tio and you grandly used magic of the fire system with reckless abandon. That time, the tentacles became ash and should not have been used to regenerate. Hajime found hope there. Though it was a guess without positive proof probably, the regeneration of the Cleone was not infinite. The semi-transparent jelly that composed its body and appeared to be equal to infinite existed in mass grandities. Also, it appeared likely that it was able to even create it on its own just by seeing the situation until now. Though, if it were annihilated in one go, it might need time to replace it. Therefore, last time, because it replaced a large quantity of its annihilated body, it prioritized regeneration over pursuit, and Hajime and the others seemed to have been able to escape. In that case, it was the same. It was fine if they could annihilate it faster than it could create or regenerate the semi-transparent jelly that composed the Cleone. However, this place was in the sea. It was sufficient to say that fire magic could not be used the most effectively as one might think. Though Tio's breath is high temperature, it did not seem to be able to finish annihilating it. There was no method. There were no stored arms that could annihilate it. In that case, it's just fine if I'll make it. Hajime, taking out torpedoes and ore successively from the treasure warehouse, began to produce something with terrific force for some reason.
Hajime, did you think of something?
Yeah, to use fire in the sea, there's no choice but this. It should defeat it if it goes smoothly.
Hajime-kun, is that true?
As expected of Hajime-san, I believed in you from the beginning.
As expected, that's our Goshujin-sama.
However, it will take time. You all, plus, leave it to you. At Hajime, who said so while smiling fearlessly as he lifted his lips, Kaori, Shia, and Tio immediately nodded their heads strongly, and even more, they confronted the huge Cleone, increasing their concentration. Hajime expanded his perception ability to the maximum using light speed, and furthermore, he demonstrated concentration power that exceeded the limit by using limit break, at the same time, too, as he poured all of his power into the weapon creation. Though he completed another one, the mass production in one go does not go like the bullets, whose degree of difficulty to create is extremely high. Nevertheless, when using them sporadically, the huge Cleone might finish regenerating or creating the semi-transparent jelly. The situation would gradually get worse if it became so. If he was going to do it instantly while wearing red magical power, the proof of limit break Hajime's frantic Rensei was repeated. However, reality is heartless. As far as the huge Cleone is concerned, in the sea was a place of its overwhelming advantage, and even with you and the others of the cheat group doing it, they did not seem able to rival it for long. Though you, Kaori, Shia, and Tio were desperately standing firm with expressions that seemed strained, they did not seem to be able to hold out until the preparation was complete. 3 minutes, the end at most, if there is 3 minutes. While invoking telepathy instinctively, Hajime shouted so. Finally, the huge Cleone, whose fierce attacks they could not contain, approached before their eyes and swept down to swallow Hajime and the others as its head split with a gappa. Hajime reluctantly decided to fire, even though it was only as much as he was able to now to try to survive this moment. But at that moment, neither you, Shia, Tio, nor Kaori either. It was a refined old man's voice that responded to Hajime's shout with telepathy.
Yo, Habu, doesn't it seem dangerous? Oak-chan will help you out.
Nay. This voice, it can't be Lee-san.
Yeah, Habu's friend, it's Lee-san.
Yes, having appeared, the one who had been captured in Furen's aquarium before, it was the human-faced fish demon Lehman who Hajime called Lee-san. Hajime, when he looked at the surroundings as he widened his eyes in surprise, suddenly a huge silver shadow rammed a hit into the huge Cleone's body from the side. The huge Cleone that was in a posture of just being about to prey upon them as it opened its mouth was blown away as it received the perfect surprise attack and was pushed away. In that space, the human-faced fish that was certainly remembered swam to the immediate vicinity of the Beyond Sage. At the abrupt situation, Yue and the others also were completely not able to follow. Seeing Lehman's figure, Yue and Tio stared in wonder. Shia widened her eyes in surprise with, "That time!" And arriving at Kaori, she screamed with a he.
Vertical bar? Was Shia-ju-chan also in good health?
Pweh! Yes, I'm healthy!
Then, Habu, what are you doing lazily? If you had 3 more minutes, would you be able to deal with the Akujiki somehow? If you have to do it quickly. Do you not have so long?
Vertical bar Y? Yeah. Although something wasn't understood well, at any rate you saved us. Thank you, Lee-san. Hajime moved the hand he had stopped at the sudden appearance of Lyman and resumed the weapon creation in a hurry. Meanwhile, the huge silver shadow, suicide attacking the huge Cleone, bought time doing an exchanging of attacks. Somehow or other, the silver shadow's true identity seemed to be a group of fish. They were not even demons or the like, and were just fish. Though they were just fish, tens of thousands. Or, if the number had gwailed, several hundreds of thousands. It seemed that even a monster opponent was able to be held off. Because they decreased in number by the staggering force, certainly, they did not seem able to keep it up for long. Why was Lehman here? Shia, who was put out ahead forcibly as the representative because she seemed to be an acquaintance, asked that question.
Lee-san? Is that fine? What in the world is going on?
Vertical bar. Humph. It isn't anything in particular. As I was properly hanging around this area, a telepathic communication was heard accompanied by a huge, familiar magical power. What I saw when I rushed over wasn't it Habu being attacked by the Akujiki. Though there were a lot of Gestians, it was my friend's crisis. It is the shame of a man to not do anything.
The group of fish? Is the Akujiki in it?
The Akujiki is that thing. Long ago, a monster that haunted the sea from ancient times. No, that fellow is a natural disaster. It could also be called an ancestor of demons. That crowd of fish is being guided by my ability. To our species that uses telepathy, the ability is possessed to manipulate the normal sea creatures to a certain extent.
A surprising fact came to light. The human-faced fish Lyman seemed to have been a fish user. The group of fish was almost destroyed in the timing that Lyman's conversation ended, and the huge Cleone again attacked while opening its mouth as it went toward Hajime and the others. However, the time that was earned by the noble Seraphis was precisely 3 minutes. A group of larger-than-normal torpedoes were spread out in the surroundings of the Beyond Sage that enclosed Hajime and the others. The number was roughly 120, and rings of the same number floated in the surroundings of Hajime, who smiled fearlessly. When Hajime activated the induction stone on hand, the group of torpedoes were shot all at once. 120 torpedoes rushed towards the huge cologne that had opened its mouth at high speed, while drawing a line of bubbles. However, only the torpedoes, because they would just scatter the body of the huge cologne even if they exploded. There would not be substantial damage either, and it seemed that it would immediately regenerate. The huge Kalini attempted to intercept the group of torpedoes, sending out a large number of tentacles as it was upset at them, becoming a hindrance to its meal. And everyone stared ahead, wondering what they should do. Hajime, who had exceeded the limit, manipulated the torpedoes with the very limit of his concentration power and barely evaded them. Are you not going to avoid them? Then he'll let you eat to your heart's content. Hajime's mutter resounded. The huge Cleone that was previously the Akujiki, at the reason that it was able to melt anything, Hajime thought that might have been why it did not avoid the attack. And then, the expectation was correct. The group of torpedoes that had finished dodging the barrage of tentacles directly hit and pierced into the huge Colone's whole body uniformly without it even showing an attitude of avoiding them. However, an explosion did not happen. Buried in the huge Cleonel's body, although they were melting, there was not an explosion of even one shot. The huge Cleonel that had embedded the group of black torpedoes throughout its body was in a state like a flecked pattern, was made as if poison had invaded the previous position. Hajime, before the group of torpedoes completely melted, carried out the next move. He took out a massive quantity of black light gire into the empty space from the treasure warehouse. It was the tar that was made from liquefied flame ore. To the inside of the surrounding floating rings, it was poured there like a waterfall. Then, at the same time, the whole body of the huge Cologne began to be stained black, as though like water soaking into paper and changing its color all at once. The black light was encroaching on the semi-transparent huge Cologne. The identity was the tar of liquefied flame ore that Hajime had poured into the surrounding rings. These rings and the group of torpedoes, all of them were connected by a small gate. What passed through the inside of the ring jumped through space and arrived at the same ring used as an exit that had been built into the inside of the torpedoes. In other words, the torpedoes were not explosives. They were things to carry the rings, and at the same time, they were also a physical barrier of the rings while sending in the tar. Naturally, though the tar itself was also melted, because of the total of 120 gates, the melting speed of the large quantity of tar that poured in without pause could not catch up to the encroachment of its whole body by the tar. In an instant, the huge Cleone, though it tried to escape the encroachment by separating its body, you and the others did not allow it. The separation was thoroughly hindered, with a barrier freezing in breath. Still, Yua's gate was unable to be used because she was not able to open the gate on Eppin Point on a moving target. Yet to be able to do it, 2 established points of space just had to be connected. The huge Cleone, because it became serious, though it had been on the verge of finishing off Hajime and the others by a war potential with a volume of the maximum class, done by gathering the semi-transparent jelly of the surroundings. Now it had backfired. The tar that Hajime poured into it finished dyeing the huge Cleone black without leaving anything in the end. Hajime, as he curved his mouth, he pierced the huge Cleone with fiery glittering eyes. In his hand, a tiny ember was being held. Burn in hellfire from inside of the body and die. The ember that was flicked by Hajime's thumb while drawing an arc, it hit directly like it was being inhaled in one of the tars that was pouring down. At that moment, a scorching heat of 3,000 degrees Celsius surged and spread through the gate instantly. Not long ago, it was dyed black, and the huge Cleome had tried to melt the tar inside its body, with an atmosphere that it felt desperation somewhere, and this time it had become dyed a scorching red. As Hajime said, from inside of its body, hellfire that was not able to be opposed did not allow even a moment of resistance, and its body was completely burned. A large crimson flower that bloomed in the sea finally appeared from inside the body of the huge Cleone, accompanied by the coloring of a name called a mass of bubbles in the sea, and it was destroyed frame, even through the exterior. And then, the super high-temperature flames raised a violent steam explosion as they evaporated the ocean water in an instant. A terrific impact surged, and the distant sea burst open like a joke. In the sea that was also still raging, it was a state like a storm was called in. Inside the rough sea, Hajime and the others who let the impact go past them searched for the form of the huge Cleone beyond the barrier. Though their gazes went around without negligence in the sea that was calming down moment by moment, the form of the Cleone that was like a nightmare was nowhere to be seen. Hajime, though he carefully investigated using the magic eye stone and Farsight, as expected, the huge Cleone's traces were not reflected. Hajime and the others were convinced the monster of ancient times, the Akujiki subjugation, had been completed here. Gah, somehow, is it over? The rings that had floated in the surroundings scattered and sank as they lost their power, and the red magical power that covered Hajime's body also quickly dispersed and vanished. At the same time, Hajime, who staggered by the side effect of limit break, went down on one knee inside the barrier of Beyond Sage, and distorted his expression from an intense headache because of overworking. However, in his eyes, that said, "I killed it." Great joy overflowed at having survived victoriously.
Hajime, are you all right?
Hajime-kun, I'll heal you immediately.
You immediately approached Hajime's side and supported his body. Kaori also went to heal Hajime as she chanted recovery magic immediately. Shaya and Tio also came to approach at the sides and embraced Hajime.
You did it! Hajime-san!
As expected of Goshujin-sama, you made a harsh killing scene. I felt chills.
At Kaori's healing, while feeling his headache lessen a little at a time, Hajime also loosened his cheeks at his companions that had gathered. While soaking in the reverberations of their victory, when it became peaceful, an old man's voice who seemed to be a little displeased resounded.
You, Boo. Please tell me if it's going to explode. Didn't you consider if I might die?
Vertical bar. Ah, Lee-san, sorry, I thought about nothing but what I was killing. Apparently, Lehman seemed to have been completely blown away by the last explosion. Because he had used all of his power to kill the huge Cleone, his consciousness had not been turned toward Lehman. Moreover, the last explosion was not something Hajime had intended. For a bit, Hajime had also been surprised.
Well, had it not be helped if it was to kill the Akujiki? Whatever was done, it was splendid.
Vertical bar. If Lee-san hadn't come, it would have been seriously terrible. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, I only stuck to my moral code. Don't worry about it.
You're an honorable man as usual, as expected of Lee-san. PM thankful too for the coincidence that you were here.
Vertical bar Habu. Coincidences that have accumulated, isn't it already called inevitable? That Achan was able to assist you was also inevitable, and that you survived like this is also an inevitability.
Hajime loosened his mouth with a ha, the same with the fish, with the old man face that smiled broadly. At the two people who were communicating something to each other, the female formation in the background were discussing together with whispers.
What's that? Are they excessively communicating something with each other?
Honorable man's friendship?
Hajime-kun, the friend that he was able to make in the other world is a Simao? Even in Japan, the appearance of him hitting it off with someone to that extent wasn't seen.